Hey everybody, welcome to the Sunday show here on the line. I'm Matt Dillahunty. I'm joined this week by Austin Archer. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's nice to be back. It's been a minute since I've been on the show, so yeah. I'm excited to be here.
Well, for those who don't know, this is one of many programs right here on the line, and this one is a call-in show. You can call 720-619-2288 and defend your views on, especially on Sundays, religion, your religion. Do you have one? Is this the Lord's Day? Which Lord? How do you know? What are you supposed to do on the Lord's Day? Are Austin and I violating the terms of your God's Lord's Day, or is this not even your God's Lord's Day? Is it some other day? Is there no day? How do we know? I don't know.
I saw an interesting video today that I thought is another question. This guy that I really like, who does an atheist on TikTok that does a lot of really just solid, straightforward material, but he talked about how suffering is objectively bad and that it doesn't require any kind of doctrine or commandment to understand, that it is something that is neurologically real, that is understood on a fundamental level by all sentient beings, that like when you touch a hot stove and it hurts your hand, you don't pull it, you don't wait to read a passage from scripture to understand whether or not that's bad. You pull it away because it's understood by your nervous system. It's objective. It is not something that needs to be dictated to you. And then this concept of, we live in a world that necessitates suffering as a condition for its existence. And if it is designed, then that means the designer built in this objectively bad thing. And most of it is suffering. So,
except they're completely wrong. It's not objectively bad at all. It's not even necessarily bad. Getting burnt on a stove, feeling it, is also a warning so that you don't get burnt on something worse as well. But yeah, it's one of those things where suffering is bad, but pain is not bad. And so they just end up picking potentially bad examples. Who knows?
I guess, anyway. I guess what he was talking about is the difference between bad and evil. That evil is this concept that like has some sort of, somebody's got to have a philosophical commentary to be made on like why something is evil or immoral, whereas suffering and pain are just things that are understood neurologically. It's innate to existing. Like it's just built in. It doesn't need to be explained to you or taught to you, if that makes sense.
Maybe we can get that person to call in. Maybe we can get some other people to call in. By the way, I'm a former evangelical, fundamentalist, Southern Baptist Christian who was studying to be a pastor, who found his way out and is now a godless heathen that spent the last 20 years trying to get believers to defend what they actually believe, explain what I've missed. How is it that I can believe and stop believing based entirely on whether or not there's sufficient evidence to warrant belief? And somebody else can go from not believing to believing and yet cannot provide that sufficient evidence, cannot provide that justification. Does that work in any realm outside of religion? Like, we talk that, yes, there are people who think the earth is flat, but we can test it. And Will Duffy and others have actually done tests to show that this isn't the case. And we've been to the moon. There are people who think that vaccines cause, problems that they don't cause. And we can go and look at the evidence. Why is God or your religion seemingly immune to evidence? And if it isn't, provide it. And if it is immune, please explain how you can believe something that is immune to evidential standards. Because I can't. And Austin is the host of the world's greatest movie review podcast. And if you're not familiar with that, you should definitely go find it.
Yeah. I host a show called People Pleaser with Austin Archer where I talk about politics, but then I also do a show called The Oneer with Austin and Kramer where I talk with my childhood best friend about films that we've watched. And it's my happy place. It's my safe place where every week my friend and I from childhood just talk about a movie and we pretend uh like the fascists are not imminently at the door.
Eating our faces with
Yeah.
ketchup. Lots and lots and lots of ketchup.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can call 720-619-2288 or down in the description, there's a link to call in via a web browser. There's a call in studio link there. Just a few reminders. There's a delay. There's a delay between myself and the studio and Austin, both of us and you guys. We're going to do our best to be patient and try and do interrupt. It may be that we need to put people on mute just so that we're not cross talking with a delay. It's really annoying to start talking and you're trying to formulate. I mean, this is, I don't have a ready-made set of questions. I don't know who's going to call in. And so you're trying to formulate a question and then partway through it, the person on the other line who is doing something that would normally just be polite, they know we can't see them nod. So it's going to be, yeah, yeah. Or trying to interject something really tiny, but you don't know that they're interjecting something tiny. You think they're trying to take, so it's just, we're going to do our best. But what we're looking for, we want people who think they have evidence-based beliefs, who can provide that evidence. Nice job. And we also want people who think that their beliefs are perhaps beyond normal standards of evidence, who want to call in and defend whatever standards they have that makes their view rational. That's it. I don't believe in any God. Austin doesn't believe in any God. If you do, let's sort that out. And it doesn't even have to be a God thing. If you've got some supernatural belief or something else, by all means. But we have our first caller lined up and other people are queuing up right now. Austin, do you have anything to get to before we start taking calls?
I'm ready to jump into this call. Looks like an interesting one.
Let's do it. Kevin is calling from Europe. Kevin's a theist, pronouns are he, him. Kevin has general questions about religion. So, hey, Kevin, how are you? Kevin, you're calling from the web browser. And one thing I should have said in the announcement is that you'll need to tap your phone to wake it up and then tap the browser to wake that up.
It was muted. That was my bad. So if you want to pretend
you
that's starting over, like it's brand new call.
I will chastise the producer later for not unmuting you.
Okay. Hi.
Hey, Kevin.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can now. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Where do I begin? Well, I think we can all agree that there is no way to prove any sort of God in terms of
I can't agree with that
from the past. Is that something we agree on?
No.
Yeah.
What would be evidence-based?
I don't know.
What do you think could prove?
So let me clarify this because it may just be confusing. When you say there's no way to prove any sort of God, I don't know how you can reach that conclusion. I don't know of any way to do it, but not knowing of how to do it doesn't mean there's no way to do it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I was talking about specific things from the past. If we have a text referencing some God or a written text from the past that says, or an eyewitness say, you can always doubt an eyewitness. You can say this guy forged the story. It's not true. Or you could say this guy says this about something and doubt it still. Because you can say, how do we know if that's a story or if it's, made up? You can always doubt, so it's not 100% true. You can never reach this 100% certainty.
Yeah, so I don't think you can be 100% certain about anything, and we're not asking for certainty. We're just asking for people to demonstrate that their belief is reasonable. So it says here, and I want to make sure we answer your questions because you called in with questions. It says here you're a theist, which suggests that you believe in some God. Do you have what you think is a good reason for that?
when you say good reason, what do you mean? What do you mean good reason?
I don't know. See, here's the thing, Kevin. I'm asking, do you think you have a good reason? And then you can either tell us what your good reason is, and we can either agree with you that it's a good reason, or we can say, no, I don't think that's a good reason. But to me, what I want are rational positions, arguments that are not fallacious, and that are ideally supported by evidence. And if you have some other justification, I'm interested in what it is, because I don't know everything, and I might have missed a way to demonstrate a rational belief in a God.
Okay, yeah. Well, the definitions are shaky, so it's like I have to say a lot of things. So how do I say it? So a theist is someone who believes in a God, but what's the formal definition of a theist? Someone who believes in a God who created the universe, or some God?
No, you just defined it. You just said a theist is someone who believes in a God.
Oh,
if you're
okay.
You call yourself a theist, what are what God do you believe in, and why?
Well, there are many gods. That's the thing. Like, how do we define a God? Like, if we define,
I'm sorry, Kevin. Kevin, do you believe in one God or many gods?
Well, well, first we have to define what a God is. It's like,
no, Kevin, we don't. I'm asking you, Kevin, personally. Are you convinced that one God exists, or are you convinced that many gods exist?
Kevin?
Okay.
Okay. Kevin, did we lose you with that
Kevin
one?
dropped.
Okay.
Hope you get back, Kevin. Here's the thing, and I'm going to explain this. Kevin might not be able to pay much attention to it if he's desperately trying to scramble back in. We could define gods. That's one way to start. But the question is, do you believe one God exists or many gods exist? And we're asking you to, by your definition of what you mean by God, to say, oh, I think only one God exists, or oh, I think many gods exist. And then from there, we can be like, all right, what is your reason for believing this? And what are the characteristics of those gods? Because if you believe that God is an expired bus pass, I agree with you. There are many expired bus passes. I don't see what the justification is for calling them God, but I would accept that there's a rational argument to believe those things exist. So this is the way we sort this out. You call in as a theist, and we're asking you, what do you believe? What are you convinced is true or likely true, and why? And do you think we should believe it as well? So hopefully we'll get Kevin back, but we have other callers. So let's try some other callers. Christopher is calling from Malaysia. Christopher's an agnostic, pronouns are he, him, and has close family seeing spirits. Hey, Christopher, welcome. You're on with Austin and Matt.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Matt, I think you mentioned like you have like your mom seeing spirits and stuff.
She has made that claim at different times. Yeah.
Yeah, I have. My dad claims that too. So that's the only reason why he believes it. I know it's like useless, but how do I deal with those kinds of stuff?
Well, what is he claiming he's seeing?
He claims like, if someone is sick in the family, he sees like a snake or something. Like, I don't know how does that have to do with anything, but he believes it's it's like a message from God or something that it's related to the sickness or whatever the problem is.
Okay.
So
how does he know that he's really seeing something instead of hallucinating it? And how would he know that it's a message from God?
that's the thing. I'm like asking you whether you have like similar things if you're family members,
I literally
believers?
just told you. I literally just told you what questions I would ask. How does he know that he's actually seeing this and not hallucinating? And whatever it is, how does he know it's a message from God? You have to ask those questions.
I have no idea. He just says it, so yeah, it's basically that's it. Yeah, because he believes it. It's one of the things. Like he believes in like Jesus and stuff. So I guess that's how it relates. I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, my mom thinks that every hummingbird she sees is her mother, and it like I don't know what use it is for me to try to explain to my mother that hummingbirds just exist, and just because her mother really liked hummingbirds doesn't mean that every hummingbird we see anywhere we are in the world is the spirit of her mother. But I don't know. Like, I also am just like, does it do any good for my relationship with my mom to every time she says, "Oh, look, there's my mom," to go, "That's not your mom. That's a hummingbird." I don't know. I just go, "Yeah, cool. There it is." Because there's some things that to me, in the immediate sense, are and in the larger picture, seem relatively harmless, but I'm not really sure. Like, I'm just as stumped as you are on what the answer is of like how to dissuade my mom from wanting to think every hummingbird she sees is her mother, if that makes her feel good. It's not
Yeah.
true. I don't think it's true. I don't think every hummingbird in the world is the spirit of my grandmother, but I don't think there's any reason to think that. But
so it's highly likely just a dream, or because I've like explained to him like how like all this stuff makes sense, like the Bible and stuff, how the Earth is not 8,000 years old and stuff like that.
yeah, I mean, you said just is it? I say that it's just a dream. It's not a dream. Like the hummingbirds are. I see them. Like hummingbirds are real. Like they're there. It's just that like her people who believe in supernatural deities and entities tend to believe that they're everything in the world that is happening around them. My personal feeling is that religion is born out of partially out of humans' ability, the human ability for pattern recognition and storytelling. And so humans are always trying to piece together patterns in a very confusing and chaotic existence. And we look for things that seem to make sense. And so when she's having a nice moment with her grandkids and her kids, and everyone's happy and a hummingbird flies by, she thinks that's her mother showing up to approve of what's happening. And it's just her piecing things together to make her feel good about that there's some kind of order in the universe. But I don't think it goes much deeper than that. It's just someone telling a story about what they're witnessing that makes and I think people who believe in this kind of stuff tend to see these things everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how to that's our whole show is I'm not sure how to dissuade them from thinking those things. We're more asking like, can you provide an argument as to why we should think that your dad seeing snakes are signs from God?
Yeah, I can't tell you that what your dad's seeing isn't real, and I can't tell you that it's not a message from God. And it is a mistake, and it is a violation of skeptical principles to just assert that it's definitely not a message from God and that your dad must be nuts or something. That is not something that you have a justification to say. Is it probable that what your dad's experiencing is more psychological and not from a God? Yeah, because that's at least natural, and that's the stuff that we have evidence for. And so far, we don't seem to have any evidence for, that would warrant believing in demons, devils, gods, signs, anything else. But we have tons of evidence that people make stuff up, that people are wrong and confused, that people wanting to seem like they know something other people don't, well, they'll get messages from God. It is, there's so many answers. And so that's why when you call in to say this, the questions that need to be asked are, what is your dad seeing? How is he confident that he's seeing what he thinks he's seeing? Can anyone else verify this? Independent verification is a critical component in determining whether something is a delusion or not. And if we were then to establish that he is in fact experiencing something, the next question is, what is he experiencing? And what's his justification for thinking it comes from God? And those are all questions that you'd have to ask your dad. And there's tons more. Like, why would God send you messages via visions that the rest of us don't experience? Is it because you're better than us? Are you special? Are you God's messenger? And how can we know? Because why would God send messages to you that make you appear crazy to the rest of us? And why won't God, demonstrate, oh, this is real? Why is, there's all kinds of questions to ask along those lines, because people go with their feeling and their preferences quite a lot until there's a reason to challenge them. And so you've got to make up your mind. Like, I don't ask my mom questions about potential visions. We have stopped having discussions about religion. The closest we came, I saw her a couple weeks ago for the first time since 2019. And the closest we came is that in one of her photo albums, she had a picture of Jesus. And I made the joke. I was like, well, because she had called it a death book, but it's not really a death book. She called it her death book. And I was like, well, it's not a death book, but, I see Jesus, so who knows? And she kind of looked up at me like, you don't want to go down that road. And we dropped it. We'd rather get along. This is kind of like what Austin was saying. Does this really impact the relationship with my mother? My mom and dad have made it clear they believe they're not going to change their mind. Their minds are admittedly closed to this, and they're not equipped to have the sort of, in-depth logic and evidence-based discussions about gods. They believe, and that's all they need. And so I guess a sidetrack would be, now, if you decide to ask your dad questions, what is your goal? What is it you're trying to determine?
I just me, I have this like small hope that hopefully like one day like I can make him see like he's living in a lie, I guess.
How do you know he's living in a lie?
Highly likely.
Yeah, I hate to say it. I think I think your hope is great and encouraging. You don't believe that religions are true, and you would like your parents not to be deceived. That's awesome. But it's also perhaps the wrong goal, because it seems that you've reached the conclusion that this stuff is a lie, and you're trying, rather than saying, hey, if my parents were right about God, I would definitely want to know. And if your dad was right about God, I would definitely want to know. And so it kind of becomes, is the motivation to change them or to get to the truth? Because if the truth is, I can't prove probably that there's not a God, because a number of them are unfalsifiable and untestable. But if they can demonstrate that their belief is rational, then I should be able to accept that. Because once upon a time, it was rational to believe that the sun went around the earth. All of the available evidence that we had at one point was entirely consistent with the model that the sun went around the earth. And it was absurd to think that the earth spun on an axis. You didn't have really an understanding that could even see the supporting evidence for that. Now, because we have better information and a better understanding, we know the earth is an oblate spheroid that spins on its axis with a tilt, and it orbits the sun, and this is how we get, you know, days and seasons and years and all of these things here. We have a model that explains this. But at one point, the rational thing wasn't true. And I think people really need to get to where they recognize you may not have access to truth. And so the best thing you can hope for is to justify the things that you believe are likely true are in fact rational beliefs.
All right. For me, I live in like a very like religious country, so if I can't even convince my parents or like show them like this is all bogus, I have no chance in, you know, like you know, just a little bit like changing the world. I mean my country, you know. If you know what I mean.
I'm not sure I know what you mean. I think I do, but
you saying
Yeah,
that you want to you're saying if you have the hope of changing your parents' minds, then that means you might be able to change the minds of more people in your country and therefore the world?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm pretty nervous. So
no,
That's
no.
all right. Yeah. It's a lofty goal, you know, but I'm not sure that either Matt or myself are convinced that before our lives are through, we're going to convince the world that.
No,
I mean, like
you strive for that.
change.
You strive for that, and that allows you
Yeah.
to reach as many people as possible.
Yeah.
But instead of striving to convince the world that religion is a lie, convince them that they don't have a rational justification for their beliefs, because you don't know if the religion is a lie, but you can tell if somebody's beliefs are rationally based.
All right.
I want a
All right.
rational world. And if that world ends up believing in some God that I've already heard of or some God that I don't know about, I'm just going to have to deal with that. But right now, I'm not aware of any rational argument or evidence for a God. And I want the world to behave rationally and honestly. Right now, I would take a bunch of moderately irrational but honest believers over virtually everyone on the planet right now.
All right, that's fair.
I'll say this too, Christopher. So I was raised in a highly religious community with all of my friends, all my neighbors, all my family members, everybody part of the same religion. And I was one of the first people I knew in my social circle and in my family circle who left. I left when I was 19 years old. And for a long time, I was by myself out there. And I couldn't really get anywhere with my friends and family members by trying to evangelize to them. In other words, I couldn't bring my way of reasoning to them, because part of being in a high demand belief structure is like these things tend to be pretty fragile. It tends to be like, at least the one that I was raised in, we were really discouraged from asking certain questions or pursuing certain lines of inquiry because they understood that the beliefs that we had would not hold up to scrutiny very well and would not hold up to rigorous examination. And so we were encouraged not to do that. And when someone brings it to a person like that who's really committed to trying not, it feels like offensive. It feels like they've asked, please leave me alone. Let me believe that the snakes mean something, or that the hummingbird is my grandmother, or whatever. Let me believe that there's a meaning to this, and don't push me on it. Because what they believe in is it's fragile. It's like really thin blown glass that you could crush it with your hand if you're not careful with it. And so they protect it really fiercely. Anyway, long-winded way of saying, in my experience, in the 20 years that I've been removed from the faith structure I was raised in, I've seen a lot of people in my friend group and in my family join me and adopt more of my views and go through faith transitions and deconstruction. And it's not because I figured out the way to sell it to them. It's because I remained there in case they ever actually wanted to have the conversation. And they always knew that if they ever wanted to dare to ask the questions or pursue certain lines of inquiry, I would be there to have the conversation with them, and I would be as direct and as honest with them as I could be. But I also I made it known to them that I was like, hey, I'm not going to bother you with this. But several times over the years, I would have a family member or a friend come to me with something that they had read that they felt like really disproved my atheism, and they'd be like, hey, can I run this thing by you? And I would say, yes, but just so you know, if you open that up, I'm going to respond honestly. Like if you come to me with this, I'm going to respond honestly, and I'm going to challenge you on that. And almost always, once a person opens themselves up to that process, they've already begun the process of the whole thing unspooling, because again, it's very, very fragile. So I would say, like, in my personal experience, the best thing I can do for my friends and family members who remain entrenched in one of these high demand faith structures is just to keep living my life and show them that there is life outside of that structure, and keep being available to them if and when they should choose that they want to have any sort of conversation. And that's ideally, I think, what we're trying to do on this show is, if theists are out there who want to have these conversations and who feel like their beliefs can withstand the scrutiny and can stand up to rigorous examination, we're here to have that conversation. But again, the deal is, we're not going to treat anybody with kid gloves. We're not going to protect your faith the way that you would. We're going to offer it the scrutiny that it should be able to stand up to.
Yeah, because you're
sense.
after the truth, right?
Yeah.
All right. So there is like no hope at all, or like there is a way
No, I didn't say there's no. What I said was, in 20 years, I've watched many, many, many friends and family members go through faith transitions and join me and adopt more of my views. And I said it's not because I pestered them over and over and over again and kept needling them. It's because I was just here when they were willing to talk. So I would just say, like,
Right.
you sharpen your toolkit, be ready for the questions if and when they come, be ready to offer them the pushback and the scrutiny that their beliefs should be able to withstand if they're meritorious and rational. But I would just say my experience has been that I can't force someone to be curious, to want to have the conversation. Some people just don't want to have the conversation,
Yeah.
Like Matt said, his parents are just committed to saying, hey, we would rather just not expose our faith to that kind of scrutiny. We would rather you respect that we would like to have it unexamined.
Damn. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So just be there, and just be rational and know your science and stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's like, like one of my friends who was raised in the same faith structure I was raised in. He's a family doctor now, and when he was going through his residency, doing a rotation at a OBGYN wing of the hospital that he was doing residency at, he called me one day and asked me about abortion, and I knew that he was still in the faith structure, and I just said, what do you want to talk about? And he was just like, just what are your thoughts on it? And I said, do you actually want to have this conversation? And he said, yeah, I'm asking you honestly. And I said, well, you're a doctor. What do you think? What have you been learning? And he goes, well, it just seems, we started having a conversation about the medical importance for bodily autonomy and the medical importance for medical professionals to be able to make decisions without having to go through the red tape of legislation that prohibits them from being able to potentially offer life-saving intervention. And that guy no longer believes in God. And it was a process of several years, but it was also a process of several conversations like that where he would call me on the phone and go, hey, I have a question for you about this. My deal with him was, I'm always here. I will answer the questions that you have. I will have the conversation with you. I'm going to be very direct and blunt and honest, not to be rude, but because I think that's the best way for us to have this conversation if you want to have it. But it was his curiosity and his sincere desire to have the conversation that made the change,
All right. Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Christopher. I gotta let you go. We gotta get on to some other callers, and I just got something in my eye, which is really annoying to have. I think it may just be an eyelash, but
should we jump into Tommy, our theist friend?
Yeah, Kevin had called back and then got dropped again. So let's Tommy's calling from Washington. Tommy's a theist, pronouns are he, him. Has a question about Hebrews 11.
Hey, hello.
Hi,
Tommy.
Hey, hi. Thanks. I had a quick question about Hebrews. I guess the screener said I'm in the deconstruction phase, so I'm kind of just figuring things out. In Hebrews, I think I gave her the wrong verse, but in 11, basically it says that Abraham was called to land and he never received the land that he was promised because he knew it was a heavenly land, and therefore God was not put to shame. But I specifically know in Genesis that he's specifically called to go to the land, not any mention of heaven or anything like that. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that. If I'm misinterpreting something, because to me that seems like a huge contradiction. It pretty much means like, why all the killing, why all the fighting for this land?
Don't know, don't care.
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to talk about it, but it's just a storybook, and it is so easy for believers to rationalize anything that appears to even remotely be contradictory. So first of all, God makes promises that are also conditional. And if Abraham disobeys, it's like Moses doesn't get to see the promised land because Moses disobeyed. Abraham doesn't get his thing either because he disobeyed or because, Hebrews 11, the 39 and 40, which you referenced in your thing, that's about basically God gave a new covenant, which is better than what he was going to give. And so, there are massive problems in the Bible. This could be one of them, but I don't care. I have no way of demonstrating it. I have no way of, people, they can come up with whatever kind of post hoc rationalization they want. Well, this is what God did, and it's okay because God did it. Cool. Until God comes down and explains why there's not a problem, I'll go with it's a problem, but I also don't care.
Yeah, I feel like Hebrews chapter 11 is, like you were saying, a post hoc rationalization. It's like Abraham never got this, but he didn't actually mean to give him this. He meant to give him heaven. And that's why God's actually still okay. And that just seems like moving the goalposts, I guess is the word I have for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, congrats to you going through scripture and comparing these things. There's a number of problems, though. And that is, one, we have no reason to think any of these things happen. Number two, that God's not coming forward and offering any explanations. Three is there's nothing new here. And so you're up against thousands of years, in this case of, not quite as many since Hebrews is New Testament stuff. But you have Old Testament claims and then New Testament stuff. And I'll tell you straight up, for example, my mom knows nothing about the Old Testament. And I'm like, how can that be? The Old Testament is where creation is. The Old Testament is where sin originates. The Old Testament is where prophecies and the law are supposedly originate. Nothing in the New Testament can make any sense or have any value without the Old Testament as a foundation. And yet the overwhelming majority of Christians don't know anything about the Old Testament, don't care about the Old Testament. That's the Jewish Bible, and it's weird. And if you find something where there's a contradiction or an apparent contradiction between Old and New Testament, and this is going to sound strange. I play a lot of board games. I have hundreds of them downstairs. And I'm a stickler for good games and how to better make good games. And so when you're making rules, new rules override old rules, and specific rules override general rules. And given that very rational basis, it's kind of trivial to say, oh, we can mostly, if there's some problem between the Old Testament and the New Testament is the one that gets it. And then the bigger questions are, why doesn't God show up in the New Testament and actually correct the things that were laying around for hundreds or thousands of years that were wrong in the Old Testament? Why doesn't he come in and say, hey, back when we said you shall buy your slaves from the heathen that surround you, don't buy slaves, don't own people. When he, why we have to wait for Hebrews to get some sort of treatment of this? Why don't we have a message from Jesus saying, here's what actually happened, with Abraham, and here's what happened with Moses. And I was there, by the way, before Abraham was, I am. Oh, cool. If you am before Abraham was, why don't you fucking explain this? Because it looks really weird. The problem is that when Jesus, if Jesus existed, and if Jesus said anything, Hebrews didn't exist. The book didn't exist at that time. So he can't correct it. So now there's things that even if Jesus existed are newer than Jesus that create more problems. Why hasn't God shown up and given yet another update? We got Bible 2.1 or 2.0. Maybe he has. Maybe Islam's the one true religion.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I just think it's I don't know. To me, it just kind of blows a hole in it for me, because you have somebody coming along saying, "Oh yeah, well God didn't actually do what He said He was going to do. It's okay because we've made heaven now." And oh, by the way, we did all these terrible things, but
not the only time.
That wasn't the point of it. It makes no sense.
So I'm glad you found something that blew a hole in it, or that was like your line in the sand. But I mean, right from the beginning, you've got God saying, "In the day you eat of that fruit, you shall surely die." That's not true. That didn't happen. Oh, well, it's a spiritual death, not a physical death. Oh, okay. So there's a post hoc rationalization. And God claimed that Tyre would be destroyed and never rebuilt, and it's still here to this day. So when's that going to happen? If by your fruits you'll know them. I did a talk in Australia called "Why Won't You Love Me?" I think it is. There's a video up somewhere, probably on my channel, that Seth Andrews edited. And I'm standing there in a bathrobe playing the role of God. And I do a walk through the entire Old Testament to show many, not all, there's too many to do in an evening show, many of the times when the Old Testament is a comedy of errors, where God tries to do something and humans fuck it up. And yet God knows they're going to fuck it up. And so he keeps trying to correct it. It's like, oh, I'm going to make this beautiful place for two people, and it goes wrong. And then I'm going to expand from that, and it goes wrong. And then it goes wrong, and it goes wrong. And now once it's gotten to the point where I'm going to have to confuse all their languages and set them all, at odds with each other. I'm clearly not going to be able to fix the world. Let me pick this one family. Let me pick this one tribe. And then that goes wrong too. And then it switches back to, well, let me try and save the whole world, or maybe just the lost sheep of the house of Israel. It is God sitting there saying, why won't you do what I tell you? Why won't you love me? And I'm not too fond of a lot of the things that I write or say, but I think that one's a pretty good take because it's me. This is I've read the Bible multiple times. And this is me going in and saying, okay, let me put myself in the mind of this character and this character. What could Adam have been thinking? What was Noah thinking? What was Nebuchadnezzar thinking? Try and do that. And then you finally get to what was God thinking? And people are like, oh no, that's blasphemy. How dare you, play God? If God made me and gave me a brain and gave me the ability to empathize and to investigate and find reason, he must have anticipated this. As a matter of fact, it's the only thing he gave me that would allow me to try and engage in this intentional stance to find out what another mind, in this case, the mind of God, might think. And if the mind of God can't spot the obvious fallacies that a horribly inferior being like me can spot and do something about them, then he's either an idiot or immoral.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that it's, one of the things you said earlier where like people keep screwing up, but I think it's like not us. Like if you create something and it doesn't go well, that's on you. Like I don't think that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't, well, yeah. Anyway, all right, thanks, Matt. I appreciate your insights. I just want to make sure I was interpreting that correctly and not like missing something, but it seems like traditional, everything that I've ever been told when things don't work the way they were supposed to, it's because, there was a spiritual aspect. So it's this area, this thing we can't touch, we can't see. So of course it's right because you can't prove that it's not right. And so, I just wanted to see what your thoughts were. I appreciate it.
Two things, Tommy, before I let you go. One is I want to make sure Austin doesn't have something to add on this.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to say really quick, Tommy, that to echo Matt and say congratulations on finding a discrepancy or a thing that shows some level of hypocrisy or inconsistency in God's character or on God's part in the Bible. I would just say the Bible is mostly that. So the fact that you're like, I found this one thing, it's like good. It's mostly that. It's mostly stuff that doesn't make sense. It's mostly from book to book, from chapter to chapter, things that portray a schizophrenic, all over the place mind of an unknowable being that is constantly doing things that make no sense. And what's interesting is like the people who try to profess the truth of the Bible. I talked earlier about pattern recognition, and you can go through and you can look for patterns across the Old and New Testament that show no. He's been consistent, the same yesterday, today, and forever. Look at this. This verse right here lines up with this verse right here, and you can pick and choose and do all kind of apologetics and mental gymnastics to make those pieces fit. But in order to do that, you have to ignore all of the other stuff that disagrees with all of the pieces you're picking and choosing. And it's like I have a brain that does this too. I think we all do. It's like every time I'm running late for something, every time I don't leave myself adequate time to get somewhere, I'm convinced that the universe rearranges itself to make me more late than I already am. That like I hit more red lights, cars are driving weirdly and people aren't going when the light turns green. And it's like the entire universe is rearranging itself specifically around making me more late. And that's the pattern that my brain latches onto, is this way that the universe is specifically designed for me, but specifically to torture me. But I don't notice those kinds of things when I leave myself ample time to get where I'm going. When I know I'm going to arrive somewhere early, it doesn't bother me that I hit a red light or that somebody doesn't go right away. I'm less annoyed by that stuff, and I'm not clocking those same patterns. And it's like, well, if the pattern is that the universe rearranges itself to fuck me over every time I don't leave myself enough time, then that would mean that every time I do leave myself enough time, everything flows. Like I should notice that pattern as well. But what I'm doing is I'm just ignoring all of the pieces of evidence that don't fit the pattern that I am trying to create, and I'm only grabbing the pieces of People do this, content creators do this with the algorithm all the time too. They grab the pieces of evidence that support their theory of how the algorithm on the internet works, and they leave out all the stuff that blatantly contradicts the way that they think it works. And I just think that, like, I'm happy you found this discrepancy. I would just say it's mostly that. Like, the book is a mess.
The other thing, last thing I wanted to say,
yeah.
Sorry. The last thing I want to say, Tommy, is I owe you an apology, and you would never know this, but I value trying to do the right thing. So when you called in, I noticed it popped up in the call screener thing, and you had tried to call in on the web line, and then you switched over to telephone, and that is often a red flag. People calling in, are often on the web thing are more likely to be trolls, and then you kind of force them to get to the calling thing. But you also suggested that the contradiction was in Ruth chapter 11. And I was like, Ruth only has 4 chapters. This Tommy's a fraud, and I'm going to cook him. And then it turned out you already spotted your mistake. And so I owe you an apology for judging you based on bad information.
No, it's okay. No, it's all right. Yeah, that's my bad. I don't know what happened when I was typing it in. Ever since Apple did this update, things have been weird. But yeah, I agree. I think that's the thing that I've noticed with the Bible that's really been the struggle for me during this deconstruction is that, it's like the fickleness. I guess that's maybe not the right word, but you have someone who sometimes they'll reward you if you're obedient. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Your life still will suck if you're obedient. Sometimes they'll punish you if you're disobedient, but sometimes you get away with it. Like, there's no consistency. There's no, and these are huge things. Like, if you were to read the Bible and actually live by the Bible, you would have a really hard life, or you'd be called to live a hard life. And like, it's very restrictive. And yeah, so I think that it's super important to, at least understand fully what this book is trying to say. And for me, there's a lot of things that just seem like explanations that are like senseless, or things that don't make sense or contradict. And I think growing up in the faith, you're taught really well how to do the mental gymnastics. But I think that's like part of my problem with it now is, why do I have to do mental gymnastics for something that is infallible and inspired by God? Like,
it should
why
be
would I
pretty
have to do
easy.
that?
I mean,
So,
one of the things that I reached out for early on when I was struggling with all this, I didn't set out to become an atheist. I set out to become the Christian minister that I thought God wanted me to be. And when I was finding problems, not necessarily this problem, I don't know that I ever saw this specific problem. When I find problems like this, the first thing I would do is pray, because I'm at the time, I'm a sincere believer, and I'm trying to do what I think God wants me to do. And God should definitely be answering me at that point. And when I got no answer, it was, well, hang on, is this even the path that you want me on? I'm just trying to do what you want, God. Hey, give me a sign here. Give me a message. Answer me. Can you resolve this discrepancy? Can you confirm that I'm even on the right path? And I hear nothing, and I feel nothing. And so the next thing I do is I reach out to ministers, to clergy, to, I had a member of my family was a medical missionary, and, knew and still knows and understands Christianity really well, and was sort of a spiritual leader in the family. And I would go to him with, questions, and on occasion. And what I would get back was, sorry, not sorry, embarrassingly bad. And it was very clear. It was like, ask your atheist friend how they can have morals how can they can't have objective morals without God. And it was like somebody who had taken the first day of the intro to morality course and then thought they had the answers and never went back for day 2. And I'm like, yeah, I've already spent way more time on this and all this. So yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Keep asking questions. And just keep giving a shit about what's true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks I appreciate Matt and Austin, correct? I got that right? No?
That is correct.
All right. Well, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Won't take any more.
Thanks, Tommy. Have a good day. Well, there you go. I'm gonna go ahead and say something, and you know what? It's probably gonna piss some people off, but I've done this for 20 years, and recently I've tried to spend a little less time on social media, but I got sucked into a couple of atheist versus Christian Facebook groups, and I left them before I could be banned because the people in those groups are embarrassingly stupid. And I mean that in a way where it's not just a matter of being unintelligent or ignorant. I mean, you have no control over what you don't know or what you're capable of learning. Stupidity, when I use the word, is a sort of willful, voluntary celebration of ignorance. It's like it would take you 10 seconds to Google this basic thing and get a second opinion and get sources. But instead, you're just going to keep, if man evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys type of thing. But worse than that is what I was dealing with. And then, for 20 years, I've been hosting these call-in shows. We used to get a lot of great calls from honest, sincere Christians and Jews and Muslims to defend their religious beliefs. And now I'd say 95% of the honest, sincere believers that call in, they're deconstructing. They're saying, wow, I found these issues, and they're not getting help from God. They're not getting help from their pastor. They're not getting help from the people in their church. They're coming to us. And so the nature of this program and programs like it is changing, because the need we're meeting is no longer the introductory epistemology 101. I mean, it's still there. It's not, hey, here's why we don't believe. It's not, no, atheist is spelled ATHEIST and not IE. We're past some of that. And instead, we're dealing with people who are like, okay, I committed my life to this and stuff's not making sense and the world doesn't feel right and I'm finding problems. And I think it's going to continue that way, because I think there are virtually no honest, sincere defenders of any religion who have any desire to engage in an honest discussion on this. And so instead, they will go off and try to convert the already partially converted, and then they will send their bots to my channel and everything else to talk shit. Okay, that old saying of talk shit, lose the kingdom. You zealots keep talking shit, and I will keep demolishing the kingdom that you think is real, and I will keep helping the people who are deconverting, and you will be standing out there alone with a sandwich board saying, behold, the end is nigh, and thinking everybody else is a clueless buffoon, when you could have been enjoying, alongside the rest of us, the one and only life we know we're going to get, instead of making it worse for yourself and everybody else. And so I just wonder what the psychology is. Do you know that you have an irrational belief that you cannot defend? Or do you not care? Is that the defense mechanism? I don't know, because I can't hang on to irrational beliefs once I'm aware of them. Once somebody shows me that my reasons for believing something is busted, I no longer believe it. I might lean that direction and kind of wish it was true, or maybe I need to look at this, but I can't keep spewing out the same bad arguments, which is why most of the people that are running around attacking, they make it about me personally and not the actual arguments. They don't have a response to good epistemology. They don't have a good response to, hey, there isn't a good reason to believe this. Yes, there is. What is it? Is in the Bible. A bunch of people have believed it. I mean, it's like, oh, We know all these things are fallacious, and that's why we're not seeing them call. But who knows?
I also want to just I think you might be right that maybe that I agree with you. I've been watching these shows for a long time and engaging with atheist podcasts and and forums for a long time, and it does seem like the conversation is shifting. We're shifting away from just beginner deconstruction 101 into something a little more maybe nuanced, of like people who are actually who were lifelong believers, who are seeking some it's that thing I was talking to about the previous caller about holding a space for people when they're ready to actually really ask questions and be open to scrutiny. It's rare that we get the people just calling in thinking that they can convince us, even though that's what we're asking for. It's interesting how that shift has happened. And also, somebody asked in the chat if Austin ever shaved half of his mustache for that thing, and I did. I dyed it 2 different colors, and then I shaved it. It did happen.
Sweet.
I even think that I did a show on here when it was dyed 2 colors. I don't think I did. I hosted a show when half of it was shaved, but I walked around for a week with half of a mustache, and it was not comfortable.
I bet. All right. So we have returning caller who we just spoke to the other day. Howard's calling from New York. Pronouns are he, him. Howard's a theist. And today wants to go through his understanding of prime mover to see what he's getting wrong. Maybe you're not getting anything wrong. Welcome, Howard. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fine, thanks. How are you guys?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Is the audio okay? Because the screener said there might be an issue.
No, I can hear you. I can hear you pretty well.
Yeah.
What do you got for us?
Well, like I said, I'd like to take a crack at the prime mover argument and see what I'm getting wrong about it. And see how many things you can identify are wrong about how I'm doing it.
Okay.
And so, unless you want to have any comments, I'll just jump in, I suppose.
Go for it.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to define, or loosely define two terms, just to avoid equivocation problems. One is time. So in my discussion, when I say time, or use any derivative words like prepositions like before or after, or always, never, any of these terms, I'm referring to the more general definition of time as a sort of non-spatial measure of 2 different states or events, as opposed to just merely the time since the Big Bang. I mean, the time since the Big Bang is obviously time in my definition, but I'm using a sort of broader definition, which allows for at least the possibility that there's some form of time even prior to the Big Bang. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I am. I don't know if Matt is.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. So even if you're just talking about time as a measure of change, I don't know that could possibly apply before the Big Bang. I'm not aware of any model of time, because time as it applies to us appears to begin at the expansion. So I don't, before the Big Bang is to me an absurdity. But if you're just talking about, well, I think you've created the loophole that you might need, but we'll go with it. And if it becomes an issue, then we'll just have to distinguish between, because we exist within space-time, and that space-time, time isn't a thing that exists absent that. It's just a descriptor of change. And so if there was a point prior to which there was no change, then there was no time.
I agree with that. So
Okay.
all I was trying to do was allow for, if there was, anytime there's, let's use the word, whenever there's change, then there would be some form of time. Might not be, again, our universal clock that started at the Big Bang, but
Okay.
there'd be some sort of time, because that's how the change would be measured.
Yes,
and
time exists where there is a clock.
Yeah, and just to clarify my response there is, like, what I'm saying is, I'm, in kind of a, I guess, a solipsistic sense. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine if you want to posit that like something existed before the Big Bang. I just don't know what that is, and no one does, and no one can. And but if you're going to use me saying that's fine to say, well, then it must be the prime mover, the original force that created the causal chain that resulted in now, I would still say, like, yeah, you've got all your work cut out for you. The problem is, like, just because I don't know if there was something before or what that was doesn't mean you do. And if you think you do, then you would have to explain to us why you think you know that. And
what's the second thing you wanted to define?
Thanks. Yeah. Boy, you guys think I did a lot of work in that one definition. So
yeah,
I have more. The other definition is, I want to just characterize all of matter, energy, space, expanding space, quantum foams, inflationary forces, all of that stuff. I just want to call it stuff. My little homage to Carl Sagan. There's all that stuff. So we don't have to distinguish between the matter and energy that existed at the Big Bang and expanded. Just anytime there is some stuff, I'm just going to refer to it that way. Again, I'm not trying to create any loopholes or do much work.
Well, you say anytime there was some stuff. Are you suggesting there was a time when there wasn't stuff?
All right. So I didn't know, but I meant anytime. I meant anytime I say in this discussion. That's what I meant. Sorry. But
okay.
So, but you're hinting at the issue. So maybe I can just stop dancing around it and just jump into it.
Great.
Stuff, as far as we know, all the stuff can change. So it has different states. It causes different things to happen. It is caused by something. There is some sort of change whenever it comes to the stuff, which necessitates that whenever there's stuff existing, there has to be time existing, or time has to pass in some fashion. Conversely, and I know you've said this before, to say that some stuff existed without time is to say that it existed for no time, which is functionally equivalent to saying it didn't exist.
From our frame of reference.
So, did you say our frame of reference?
Correct.
Are you bringing in sort of relativistic concept? What do you mean by that?
Yes.
Okay.
So a photon experiences no time from its frame of reference. Yet from our frame of reference, we can see and measure photons over time, and they travel at what we end up calling light speed. But from the photon's frame of reference, they exist for no time, which is an absurdity, but that's what the math shows.
Okay, I get what you mean. So
okay.
That is what the math shows. I've heard physicists debate whether that really means photons don't quote unquote experience something that resembles the passage of time. But my point was, in any frame of reference, there's some frame of reference that stuff is changing state, events are happening, or things are moving in such a way that time is passing.
Yeah,
some measurable quantity that we would call time.
From our frame of reference, existence requires time.
Okay. Okay.
And so that's
fine.
why we can say
I'll go with that.
photons exist, because from our frame of reference, they exist for some period of time from our frame of reference, even if they experience no time from their frame of reference. I just want to make sure you seemed bothered by the fact that I was bringing up, special relativity. But okay, let's get on to this prime mover thing.
I'm getting on to it. I'm not bothered at all that you brought it up. I was just clarifying.
Okay.
I'm fine.
By the way,
with
not a
relativity.
physicist.
Sorry?
I just saying, by the way, not a physicist. I'm going to get some of this wrong, but that's why we have folks like Dr. Darren Adair and maybe Dr. Blitz and others come on occasion to fix the shit that I get wrong, but go for it.
Okay. So the question is, I guess, what I'm trying to resolve is whether the stuff has necessary existence, meaning to say whether it must exist, or alternatively, it doesn't have to exist. It would have been caused or brought into existence, or its existence is contingent on something else.
Wow.
So okay. I was going to continue, but it sounds like.
Yeah. Thanks, Howard. I appreciate that. So there's a lot of different categories of arguments for God. And I thought we were moving towards the prime mover argument, but now you've shifted to sort of an argument from contingency about stuff, which is not the prime mover argument, but is instead, or not a prime mover argument, but is instead a contingency argument. I'm not bothered. We can go whatever direction you want. It was just a curveball. That's why I said, wow. So keep going.
Okay. Sorry. I did tell the call screener it could be called the uncaused cause argument or other things. So
see prime mover and argument from contingency, they're different. But anyway, it's all right. We can deal with it. Go ahead.
All right. So let's posit, just try to see what happens if we posit that the stuff has necessary existence. So if the stuff has necessary existence, then time also would have had to exist, would have always existed. When I say always, it's sort of tautological because always is a measure of time. But what I mean is essentially time would have had to go back infinitely. Because if there was ever a point at which no stuff in any form ever existed, there would have been no time. So in order for stuff to have necessary existence, and then time would have to extend backwards infinitely.
Okay. So we already have a number of problems here in that time you've defined as a measure of change, and stuff exists if time exists from a specific frame of reference, but that doesn't mean that it exists from the frame of reference of that stuff.
Well, if the stuff has a frame of reference, it exists.
Everything has a frame of reference. This is just math. This is math. So for example, does a photon count as stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Photons exist within our frame of reference for measurable periods of time. We can measure the change. From the photon's frame of reference, it does not exist. It experiences no time. And so you're talking about time as if time is a thing that exists, but you've also defined it not as a thing that exists, but as merely a measure of change. And so if there's no change, there's no time. Well, that's not true. There may not necessarily be time if there's no change.
Okay. I didn't mean it to come off in a circular way. I don't think time exists. So if I suggested that, then I retract, or that's a mistake.
Okay, you said if stuff has a necessary existence, time must also always exist infinitely. And so I don't know what it means to say that stuff has a necessary existence, because if a photon is stuff, I don't think a photon has anything that could remotely be called necessary existence. And it exists temporally from our frame of reference, but not from its own. So we've already determined one thing that meets your definition of stuff that violates what you just said about time.
When I say that time in any frame of reference, I wasn't limiting it to only the frame of reference of the stuff, but that in some frame of reference, time can be measured as changing whenever there is stuff.
The very thing of saying whenever assumes time.
I meant it conditionally.
Is it possible?
Sorry, it's hard. It's hard.
Is it possible for something to exist absent time from its frame of reference? Because that's what we say of photons.
Yes.
Okay. So then your statement that whenever stuff exists, there is time, only makes sense if it's a frame of reference that includes time, because a photon may be said to not exist from its frame of reference, and yet we know it exists. I tell you what, instead of me continuing to dig in on this, why don't I take notes and just present your case, and then I'll take notes and we'll go back, because I think we're confusing a number of things, but I want you to get your case out.
Okay. Based on the assumption, as I was not doing a good job explaining it, but I've been trying to explain that for stuff to have necessary existence, it follows that time goes back infinitely. Time would have to regress infinitely. Because again, in the absence of any time, time had a beginning. It could not have been stuff prior to that beginning, put it a different way. So time going back infinitely creates, there are several problems with that. First, in order for us, to entertain the notion that time could be infinite, time being something that is measured in the physical world, there would have to be a demonstration that physical infinities are even possible. And as far as I know, having done whatever research I did, listening to Brian Cox and Sean Carroll and these other things, we don't know if physical infinities are possible. We know mathematical and potential infinities are possible. We do not know whether there's been no demonstration that something physical can be infinite. So we don't even know if that's a possible explanation. Secondly, time in particular has two problems when it comes to suggesting that time goes back infinitely. One is it creates the measure problem, and two is it creates the so-called infinite regress problem, where it's at least theoretically impossible to reach the present. So given those problems, even though we cannot demonstrate that infinite time is possible, and can't demonstrate that there's something else that it pre-existed time, we have two propositions, neither of which can be demonstrated as being possible. But one of those propositions, the possibility of time being infinite, comes with these paradoxes and logical problems. The measure problem, the problem of never being able to reach a point in a directional flow of time. In space, which has no directional flow, something could be in the middle of space and move around. That's not a problem, even if space is infinite. But because time is directional, it creates the infinite regress. If I started now and tried to get back to the beginning, I would never reach it. I could never reach the beginning to now. So because that proposition, which I can't demonstrate is possible, is burdened with absurdities, absurd conclusions, abductive reasoning would suggest that I should go with more likely the other possibility, which is that time had a beginning, that the stuff does not have necessary existence, and that therefore something else with necessary existence must have brought the stuff into existence. Now you can ask me, I know because I can't prove that other thing is intelligent, at least not with this proof. Well, with this logic. Sorry, I got ahead of myself there. We can know a few things about it because in order to avoid the special pleading problem and avoid these paradoxical results, this other thing which brought the stuff into existence has to be different in kind than the stuff. So, for example, it has to be something that can't change, because if it changed, it would be subject to time, and then you'd be back in the infinite regress of time with this other thing.
Okay, Howard.
Yeah, I know. You let me go on way too long.
Well, let's just assume for a second that what you're saying is correct. This thing that you say gave time its beginning.
Well, brought stuff into existence.
No. You said no. You said time must have a beginning, and this thing gave time its beginning.
All right. Okay.
How did it do that without time?
The time that as I defined it, was a measurement of the change in stuff.
Yes. So if there was from that being's frame of reference, or that entity's frame of reference, there was no time, and then it began time, isn't that a change?
That's a change in our reality, yes.
No. That's a change. What you're describing is meta time, then, that there's another time reference other than our frame of reference. So your thing doesn't have anything to do with time. It just is different from our frame of reference on time. Does God not have the same problem of infinite regress if it always existed?
No.
How did God get to today?
God does not have the infinite regress problem because
Why?
God doesn't change. Because God doesn't change.
That's
entropy.
not.
He doesn't have an entropy
How
value.
can God be the cause or something if God does not act?
I didn't say he didn't act. He doesn't change.
That is change. Action is change.
I think the thing is that I'm hearing here, Howard, is that you're saying the infinite regress concept has way too many problems that you run into that you get your brain all twisted up for you to accept it. So you just go, well, then in that case, we're going to throw that out and say it has to have begun. And if it has to have begun, then there has to have been something that, even though you've admitted that you can't prove any of this, you're just saying there's too many problems with infinite regress. And I think what we're trying to point out here is there are just as many problems with the concept of this thing that begins all time and stuff existing in some kind of meta time space where it is allowed to change and create things without time and without space, but it also isn't bound by the problems of infinite regress because it's always the same, and it is allowed to do actions and make things and create things magically, seemingly, without changing. There's just as many problems with the one theory as there are with the others.
Also, I'm not citing this as an appeal to authorities, but every physicist that you listed who understands space-time and time better than any of us here talking, how many of them have reached your conclusion about a God?
I'm going to go with 0.
Yeah, that would be my understanding based on the ones you listed. So much the same way that like William Lane Craig famously tried to use the Borg-Guthrie-Lincoln model to suggest that it demonstrated a God. And then they got, I think it's Alan Guth basically jumped in to say, no, that's not what my model says, and you don't understand my model. I appreciate the fact that none of us here have a good enough understanding of this. And we do, by the way, have some folks, like I would recommend calling in on Monday. Well, I don't know when Aaron's on next, but Dr. Aaron Adair's on Skeptalk frequently and was just on with me recently on my show. But here's the thing. If space-time began, our frame of reference on space-time began with the expansion of the universe, that doesn't mean that the stuff of the universe didn't already exist absent time in any frame of reference. So if the time we're talking about is time from our frame of reference, then there is no point in time where the stuff didn't exist, right?
So again, I was using time in any frame of reference.
Okay. You can't do that. Do you have access to time beyond our frame of reference?
Do I have access to it? Yes, by changing my speed. I'm sorry, I don't. What do you mean? I mean, I can change.
Do you have any way? Do you have any way to define, describe, and confirm the existence of the meta time that you are asserting as a necessary solution to your confusion about infinite regress problem?
The most I can no, but the most I don't have any direct access to.
There's no but.
We can.
There's no but. It's just no.
Negative.
It's just no. Do you have access to stuff beyond our space-time?
No, physicists might, or they have deposited. Like
I am not aware. Okay. I didn't ask you who might. I don't give a shit about your speculations, Howard. You and I do not seem to have access to stuff beyond our frame of reference. I don't know what it means to say there is stuff that exists outside of our frame of reference. We have no way of confirming it. We don't even have a way to confirm that that is possible. Do you have a way to confirm that it's possible for there to be stuff beyond our frame of reference?
Through abductive reasoning? I mean,
no. That's not confirmation. Abductive reasoning is garbage. And also, it's not going to do what you want it to do. Abductive reasoning is reasoning to the best explanation, but you don't have any explanation. And if you don't have any way to show that there's stuff or any way to understand stuff, define stuff, test for stuff, verify stuff, you have no way to demonstrate that it's even possible for there to be stuff beyond our space-time, then it is useless for you to speculate. And if your abductive conclusion is based on unfounded, useless speculation, you are just pulling shit out of your ass. Actually, it would be better to pull stuff out of your ass because that would at least be stuff. You are using your imagination. That's not abductive reasoning. That's frustration with a lack of answer, so you're going to make shit up.
First of all, last week when I called in and Dr. Adair explained about the inflationary force and how it creates bubble universes and created our universe, that is stuff that we don't have access to That's not in our space time. But there was no problem with him saying that or with physicists saying that. They can speculate all they want about what happened prior to the Big Bang.
It's speculation, Howard. I'm not here to speculate. I'm not here to use my imagination. I'm not here to see if I can construct a framework of multiple worlds and multiple realities and multiple times and dimensions. I'm trying to figure out, do we have a rational justification right now to believe there's a fucking God? And the answer is no. And the fact that you're coming in with your speculations and talking about speculative physics, I don't know anything about it, nor do I care about it. But that's not objective reasoning to say, I can't think of anything better, so I'm going to go with this. No, the right position is to say, I don't have sufficient justification to hold a position. But instead, you are not a truth seeker following the evidence to a conclusion. You are a, air quotes, truth shaper. You have a conclusion and you are desperately trying to find a way to justify it, including using your imagination and abductive reasoning that isn't abductive reasoning.
Okay.
Bottom line in my mind, Howard, is if there is a divine creator that gave motion to time and stuff and put all this in order, it just shouldn't be this agonizingly difficult to try to figure out how such a being could exist. It should just be more apparent. Shouldn't have to do all this. And even when we do all this, even like the amount that you're trying to like dig into the nuts and bolts of physics and metaphysics to try to go like, okay, if I look at all of that, I think I can fit this theory in there, and it still doesn't work. It's still just putting something where you don't, when the answers run out, you're just shoving this thing in there, but it just shouldn't be that difficult. Should just be something that you can demonstrate in a lot more simple terms. And the fact that you have to work this hard only to wind up at, when I do all of this work, I'm left with an answer that says, well, something putting this in motion makes more sense to me than infinite regress, but that thing that put it in motion is not bound by the fallacies in infinite regress. That thing is fine to exist forever, and that's going to be my answer. And it all amounts to just saying just because. It all amounts to what Matt was saying. You started with the theory that there has to be something putting this all in motion, the prime mover, and then you built, you trying to use the language of physicists and scientists, you reverse engineered this explanation that is incredibly convoluted and hard to explain and hard to listen to, but ultimately amounts to nothing.
It's really strange because so infinite regress is a conceptual problem that probably exists because we are only able to perceive time in a single direction. And once you try to start going backwards, you've already created your own errors. There are plenty of paradoxes related to infinities. For example, in order for me to move from here to the next side of the room, I have to cross the first millimeter. But before I can cross the first millimeter, I have to cross a half millimeter. And before I can cross that half millimeter, I've got to cross half of that and half of that and half of that and half of that. And that goes on without end, which means there are plenty of infinities wrapped up within finite areas. And nobody says I can't walk from here to the other side of the room because I would have to cross infinite segments in there, because we know that we can just go like a single step for me is the entire, I'm crossing countless infinities. And because we're stuck perceiving time in one direction, and I know from the standpoint, I shouldn't say I know, I am aware from the standpoint of quantum mechanics and physics that there are models where effect precedes cause. And where there's the A theory, the B theory, and then there's can things happen simultaneously? And so for me, the big answer to how does this work is I don't know. I don't think anybody else does either. We are experimenting and exploring. And when we're experimenting and exploring, it's worthwhile to engage in speculation and maybe even some absurd models to try to show what can and can't happen and to build there until you get to a point where you can say, all of the available evidence suggests that the most rational conclusion is whatever it is. I don't see how we're remotely there when all we're doing is saying this is confusing. We don't know how it works. And so I'm just going to declare that there's a magic being that is somehow exempted, or not necessarily being. There's a magic something that is exempted from these problems and serves as the solution. That to me isn't scientific. It's not rational. It doesn't even rise to the level of abductive reasoning, because an abductive reasoning is to say, I'm going to pick the best out of the available explanations, but your explanation isn't even an available one. It hasn't been demonstrated to be a candidate explanation. It is indistinguishable from there's a magic unicorn that is exempt from the paradoxes tied to time, and he farts out realities.
Okay. So, first of all, with respect to Austin, what you said, I don't believe that the level of difficulty in explaining something has any relevance to its truth value. There are many concepts in physics which are extremely difficult to explain, but they are true, quantum mechanics. So I don't think the level of difficulty getting to a conclusion has anything to do with its truth value.
That's fine, but you still didn't explain how God exists. That's fine. That's fine. You still didn't. You didn't explain how God exists with all the complexity that you did. You didn't even come close. So that's fine. But anyway, keep going. Sorry.
Okay. Well, that I would agree. That would be a fallacy. So you point that's a fallacy. I didn't get close. As far as the rest of it goes, I'm a unicorn is stuff. Like that's not an alternative explanation.
Is God stuff?
No, God is not stuff.
Really? How do you know?
Yeah, he can't be. That's my sort of the whole point.
God can't be
stuff. In order
stuff?
to resolve, he can't be stuff. That's right.
Wow. So
But
God has limitations?
I'm sorry?
God has limitations?
Many limitations.
Howard, it sounds like you're just making up rules. It literally just sounds like you're just inventing rules to fit whatever spot you need them to fit in your theory. And I'm sorry, again, did you say that it's a fallacy that I said you didn't come close to explaining how God exists?
No.
What fallacy am I committing?
No. That was not a fallacy. Sorry. You're correct that it's a fallacy. If I didn't get close to explaining it, then that's a fallacy. I'm agreeing with you.
Okay. All right.
Sorry. It's confusing. Yeah, God can't be stuff. Otherwise, the same problems would exist. I'm only looking at it without looking at something.
So you're defining away. You're defining away a problem. How does something that isn't stuff do something?
I've already acknowledged that I can't answer those kinds of questions because
I can't. My goodness, isn't that the whole point?
Of it.
You're asserting that there's a non-stuff thing that is responsible for doing stuff, and you don't know that that's possible or how it could happen.
Correct. I agree that I can't demonstrate the possibility of it. My point was, we also can't demonstrate the possibility of the infinite time existing. So we have two
I'm
propositions.
sorry. I'm sorry. That's literally the fallacy known as whataboutism. When somebody points out that you're asserting something that you cannot demonstrate, you don't get to say, well, somebody else asserted something that they couldn't demonstrate. So what?
That's not what I'm
that
saying,
doesn't
Matt.
change
That's
the
not what
fact
I'm
that it's
saying.
irrational.
That's not what I'm saying.
It
I'm
is what
saying,
you're
well, you
saying.
can't do
It
either.
is exactly what you're saying.
Can I just finish? My point is, we have two propositions, neither of which can be demonstrated to be possible, but they are mutually exclusive.
Are they
So one of them-
exhaustive?
I can't think of anything else, which is a fallacy.
Oh, you can't think of anything else. Well, if you can't think of anything, does that tell us? That's literally another fallacy, Howard. The fallacy of personal incredulity, argument from personal incredulity is, I can't think of any other explanation. Well, I'm sorry. You've got a pretty good imagination that you're leaning on, and yet your imagination has failed, and you've decided that you're just going to stop there. That's another fallacy, Howard. Sorry.
The reason why I can't think of another is because these appear to be mutually exclusive. So in one instance,
I'm sorry. Mutually exclusive is irrelevant to whether they're exhaustive. That's why I asked if they are exhaustive. Plenty of things are mutually exclusive, but not exhaustive. It is not possible for me to be a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader and a Phoenix Suns cheerleader. But that's not exhaustive. I can be neither. I can be something else.
What I meant was that
I'm not here to assess what you mean, Howard. I'm here to talk about what you said. Is it my fault that you didn't say what you meant?
No.
Cool.
No, as long as you are willing to let me keep going, I'm going to try to fix it. I don't know what else to do.
Well, I would say that instead of trying to fix it,
it's fine.
How are you going to fix the fact that you are engaged in speculation and trying to use something that you admit you cannot demonstrate as possible or even likely to serve as a justification for something?
Because all of the possibilities I can't demonstrate are possible. So
that sentence literally made no sense. All of the possibilities you literally can't demonstrate are possible.
Okay. What
There's
I meant
just
specifically
Howard, there's just no reason at the end of like this whole complex, convoluted thing that you've constructed to call him to be like, hey, I really want to sound like I've done my homework. There's just no reason why we can't just plug in any other of the possible explanations for the origins of the universe and all the stuff that is and all time and all stuff. Why we can't plug in any of the impossible possibilities, the possible things that we can't prove are possible, like simulation theory, or like the fact that we're just like a bacteria structure growing on a giant dog somewhere in a bigger universe, or like that we like there's just, or that we're existing in the dying mind of a man who lives in a big, like there's just no reason why we can't plug in any number of infinite other possibilities into the whole at the origin of the thing you're trying to lead us to. There's no reason why we should go with the prime mover or the creator, this infinite being that pushed this all into motion. There's no reason why we should plug that in. And you admit that again and again and again, that you cannot demonstrate why we should plug those things in. So what are we doing here? What is why have you constructed all of this? Why have you gone through all of the work to try to explain where this prime mover could potentially hypothetically fit if you know there's no good reason to even believe that, you can't demonstrate that thing is the thing that goes in that spot? Why build the whole thing if fundamentally at the end of it you're just going to say and that's why I think it was a dinosaur named Kevin who is infinite and who breathes bubbles who built it all? If that's going to be the conclusion, if the conclusion is just there's a thing that I know I can't demonstrate that I'm going to put in that spot, Why? What's the point of all of it? If you know you can't demonstrate it at the end of the whole long convoluted thing, why even bother with it? Why not just begin at there's something that goes before the Big Bang, maybe, and I don't know what that is. The end. You know?
I have a question after you.
Can I,
Howard,
should I answer that first, or you want to?
Yeah, I mean,
go for it.
Yeah.
I was waiting, but I thought it was kind of rhetorical.
Sorry, I know you don't like dead time on air, but it takes me a second or two to formulate my thoughts. So I'm just trying. All of the examples you gave, Austin, are stuff. So I've already that all falls into the same category. If physical things are creating other physical things, that's not a solution I'm proposing. So that's
yes,
why
it is.
none of those things apply.
No, what you're saying is the thing that I'm proposing isn't stuff and doesn't exist in time. It's meta stuff that exists in meta time. And I'm saying why? And you're saying I can't tell you why. I can't explain why. So sure, you're just putting a different magical thing in that spot that doesn't have to obey any of the rules. Yeah. I don't.
I got to it through negative inference by eliminating the alternative. That
no,
was
sir.
what I was trying to express.
That only works when you can demonstrate that the alternative is exhaustive. Which is, we're right back to you ignoring the shit that I just pointed out places. Let me ask you my question. Do you believe that God is a thinking agent?
Yes, but it doesn't follow from
No, I don't need a
argument.
but. It's a yes or no. I'm leading up to the important question.
Okay, yes.
Do you think God gives a shit if you have a rational belief in its existence?
No.
Do you think it matters to God if anyone has a rational belief in God's existence?
No.
Then I don't give a shit about your God or your thoughts about your God. You have an absolutely useless God. You are sitting here talking about, let me see if I can speculate and justify and have some kind of quasi, maybe rational belief that doesn't fucking matter to God or anybody. It is a complete, unequivocal waste of everybody's fucking time, Howard. Why should I spend time talking about a God that doesn't give a shit if we have a rational reason?
As I mentioned on one of my earlier calls, or both, I am stress testing arguments that convinced me.
Stress test them somewhere else, Howard. I've appreciated, listen to me. I've appreciated the fact that I thought we were engaging in an honest discussion about that actually fucking mattered. If I knew you were constantly calling in about something that you think doesn't fucking matter, I would have cut you off at the knees. Because there's a billion people out there that believe in a God that does fucking matter and does fucking care. You are proposing an absolutely useless God concept and wasting everybody's fucking time on it. By the way, why do you believe that there's a thinking agent God that doesn't care if we have a rational reason? Why do you think that? Captain Rational?
Why does anything I have to say matter anymore?
Okay.
You said that though, but Howard, you were the one who said it doesn't matter. Like the God I'm proposing doesn't care, doesn't matter. So you're
this only
like
matters.
It's us.
This only matters because I'm getting ready to expose you as someone who doesn't give a fuck if they're rational, but is pretending that they'd like to be rational. That's why it fucking matters. Now you only exist for me to demolish. Why do you believe that there's a thinking agent God that does not care if we have a rational belief of its existence?
because based on the characteristics that I would have to attribute to it, it can't change or be changed. So it can't be affected by what we think. So in
Howard,
that
say goodbye.
sense, because it can't be affected by
Howard,
it,
say goodbye.
it can't care.
You don't give a shit about reason. You don't give a shit about rationality. You're saying based on the characteristics. So basically, based on the characteristics you've invented through your own imagination and your own confusion, you conclude that there must be this being, but he is a thinking agent, but he doesn't care whether or not we do it. So now you are knowingly engaged in an irrational and useless exercise. Goodbye, Howard. I cannot fucking stand that. That's almost worse than the Philo bros, Phil bros, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's the amount of effort that Howard seems to have gone through to try to formulate something that sounds intelligent, sounds like someone who's really done a lot of work reading about and listening to and trying to figure out how to speak intelligently on the concept of physics and metaphysics and quantum physics, and wants to use that to try to put his God concept somewhere. And then, but ultimately, when he gets to the point of saying, this is where my God concept fits, he's also like, but this God concept is something that I can't demonstrate evidence for at all. And also, I don't think that it is a rational thinking agent that cares about what we think about it. And it's like, well, then what the hell are you doing with your life? What are you doing with our time and why? What is the point of all that?
I have literally pages and pages of notes in front of me that I typed while Howard was listening, because unlike Howard or Howard's God, I do give a fuck about whether or not it is rational to believe that a God exists. I do give a fuck about whether or not we have good reasons for beliefs. And rather than being in this mindset of I'm really confused and I went and listened to a bunch of scientists who don't think there's a fucking God or anything fucking like it, I've decided after listening to them that there must be a God and it is a thinking agent, and that it doesn't care if we believe it. Okay. Congratulations. I mean, this does not even deserve to be called mental masturbation, because masturbation's fucking awesome. This is absolutely nails on a chalkboard level of stupidity.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the stupidity, not unintelligent, not ignorance. This is stupidity. This is saying, I really want to find a rational reason for something that evidently doesn't care if there's a rational reason. And I'm going to use my own ignorance, which I'm going to celebrate and ignore the experts, by the way, not just appealing that they're right. If they're claiming they're just unconvinced of something. But if you want to say, oh, it's rational to believe this, I want to make I'm just testing out potential arguments. Well, I ain't your fucking trained monkey anymore, Howard. We're done.
Well, and also I want to say, you're right. Masturbation is awesome, but when it's not awesome is when someone's doing it in front of you against your will. That's when it's not fun for us to have to sit here and deal with you trying to jerk off against our will in front of us. That's not fun.
I figure we got some atheist callers here that we're going to get to, and some of them have been on hold for a little while, but I thought we would get our producer in here to let people know exactly what's going on here at 4 o'clock and at 7 o'clock and on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all these wonderful days.
Yeah. All right. Let me get our schedule pulled up here. So coming up tonight, hold on. Let me turn down this other thing. I can hear my voice echoing back and it's totally throwing off my ability to speak. There we go. All right, so if you stick around after the show ends at 4 in about an hour, you're going to get automatically sent over to the Jimmy Snow channel, where I think it's going to be Jimmy and Javon Bradley doing a show. I'm calling it now. Then back here for the After Dark show tonight will be Forrest Valakai and Owen Morgan. Tomorrow on Skeptalk will be John Gleason and Erica Gutzik-Gibbon. Tuesday on Chewed Gum will be Alyssa and Promise. We get one more episode with the two of them, I think, before Promise is heading back to her escaped fantasy land where there's no time and where we all miss her greatly. Then on the Hang Up on Wednesday, Matt will be joined by Ian Harris. TACIS will be Dr. Ben and Josie Caballero on Thursday. And we have 2 episodes of Cus I Wanna in the next weekend. Friday will be Forrest Valkai joined by Cynthia McDonald on Cus I Wanna. And then Saturday, Justin from the Deconstruction Zone will be joined by Sarah, Leaving Faith again. So I know a lot of you have been asking for another episode with the 2 of them. That'll be coming at you this Saturday. And then next Sunday on the early show will be Matt and Shannon. Matt's gone. Oh, no. It was going to be a Matt and Shannon episode, and then Matt had to go and work. Anyway, that's all the stuff. Go hit the notification bell and all that.
Now. Yeah, and I let Jimmy know. And you knew, but we just, I guess, didn't update the schedule. So my apologies. You guys are you're gonna get Shannon, and that's gonna be awesome. And it's probably better without me. All right. Let's start at the top here, because Eugene's been on hold for well over an hour. Eugene's pronouns are he, him, calling from Georgia, and Atheist has questions or comments, I guess, about navigating a conversation with Christian subjective opinions. Hey, Eugene, welcome. You're on with Austin and me.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Your last caller demonstrated my hatred towards philosophy, because I feel like he demonstrated everything that bothers me about philosophy. But what I was calling about...
You should stop that, because that caller was not in any way demonstrating good philosophy. So what you hate is bad attempts at using philosophy to make arguments. That's not philosophy.
Correct. Exactly. But I see it used all the time that way, and it just drives me nuts. But so what I was going to say is that I realized recently that the scientific method goes against human nature, because human nature loves absolutes. And I notice this when I'm being cornered by religious people, that they are searching for absolutes. And when they pick my brain, I can never give them an absolute. I can say that the science shows, or we have enough information, but an absolute would be against the scientific method. So I was wondering, do you think caveat and approaching the conversation with people that are using subjective opinion as fact to maybe have a discussion about, I'm only going to talk about objective facts because we're in a group and that's the only thing that matters? Your subjective beliefs are personal to you, and the only ones I care to talk about are the ones that I can prove objectively. Does that seem like a good faith way of going about it? Because I know I can't change people by forcing them, but I notice that any conversation I have with them, they're doing these mentalism, and I don't think it's consciously. I think it's subconsciously. They're doing this manipulation of human thought, and as soon as I approach it good faithfully, I trigger a human response of shutting them down. So I was just trying to pick both y'all's brain on how to approach it with more respect to them and to myself.
Well, again, I talked about this in an earlier call. Part of what makes them shut down, especially if it's sometimes people, like I talked about how you can't really, like you said, can't really force any of this on anybody else. They need to have that fundamental curiosity, but sometimes theists will start a conversation that they're not ready for, thinking that they've got something. And, we get a lot of those calls on this show, people who think they've got something. And the second that they realize the thing that they thought they had isn't actually as strong as they thought it was, or doesn't actually withstand scrutiny, they do get really, really defensive and shut down. And that, again, that's because a lot of these face structures are incredibly fragile and incredibly, there's a lot of fear and defensiveness when it comes to thorough examination of the actual strength of their positions. But there's also this there's this fundamental impasse usually in the dynamic differential between atheists and theists, and usually it's because a lot of atheists started out as theists, and there's this thing happening where, at least for me, when I'm talking with a theist, I understand the basis of how they reach conclusions and how they reason, and work through their worldview and develop their worldview, because I was them, because I spent almost half my life being them and formulating a worldview their way. And so I have an empathetic and sympathetic understanding and a personal experience of understanding how they're arriving at the conclusions that they're arriving at. But I also understand that their worldview often demands that they have a profound lack of curiosity and understanding how I develop my worldview as an atheist, because there's a fear there of like, well, if I were to understand you, I could lose this thing that's really, really important to me, my faith. And so sometimes what happens is you'll get into a conversation with a person who's not actually seeking for help with their deconstruction, but they're arrogantly thinking they're going to present you with some kind of trump card that you, as the fool atheist, will be like, and it's usually like something really basic or stupid like Pascal's wager, and they'll be like, well, have you ever thought that what happens if you die and it is all real? And they expect you to just like wither and melt at these really, really basic thought experiments and thought problems. And when you don't do that, they're not prepared to actually have the debate. And they weren't actually hoping to have the debate. They were hoping to just like present this very basic, easily refutable thought to you and have you be like completely destroyed by it. But when you don't do that, they immediately shut down. And that's because a lot of those people aren't actually seeking to have good faith back and forth discussion and to hopefully chisel away at their ideas until the strongest ones remain. But so I guess what I'm saying is the onus is just back on the believer. Like, are they sincere in their desire to actually arrive at the most sound, the most rational, the most reasonable beliefs? Or are they just trying to win with some, like, are they trying to dunk? And theists are typically really bad at dunking. I don't know if that helps, but that's my initial thoughts. Matt, do you have feedback on that?
No, let's see what Eugene, I need examples, because I don't do well with they keep doing this and it's all vague generalizations. And then it looked like there was also some attempts to kind of like psychoanalyze them. None of that is helpful. I don't know how to operate in that space. What are they saying that you're having difficulty with? Because you used subjective, objective, and it almost sounds like you're trying to get to, like this, the scientific method is, you're like, oh, that's, it goes against our nature because we want absolutes. Well, we can't have absolutes, but the scientific method goes against our biases intentionally. But that doesn't mean that you have access to science. Doesn't make proclamations of absolute truth. It just gives models that are the best current explanation. So it's like, I don't even know how to get to, I don't know. I missed something somewhere because it wasn't specific enough.
Well, I don't mean this as just I probably shouldn't just said religious, because I see this behavior through the board. Doesn't matter if you're religious or not. I know atheists that do this, but basically I'm okay with science not being absolute. And that actually makes me feel better, because that means if it's not correct, it's going to search for the truth, and it's not going to make claims outside of what it can prove or demonstrate. So for me, that makes me comfortable But I've noticed, it seems, and I'm not psychoanalyzing people to judge them. I am noticing that some people don't find comfort in that answer, no matter if they are religious or not.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But it seems like it's a thinking pattern of human nature that needs to be addressed, that we do it, and how to approach it properly.
It's called choosing comfort over truth, which is why for years I've asked people if they care more whether their ideas are true than whether they're comfortable or comforting.
Yes.
I mean,
yes, exactly.
There's even an entire album called Truth Over Comfort. I've got the t-shirt from a rap artist. This is, yes, getting people to stop going with the comforting pacifier, and getting them to, you can't get people to do the homework themselves. I mean, my entire life has been spent doing other people's homework for them. I'm just glad I'm getting paid for it.
I understand. And I guess for me, it's not, because I was raised with religious background, but no one denomination. So I'm not a typical atheist, and I just put an agnostic in the front to soften how my stance is, and also to be more open. But like people that are atheists that are close to me, I see them doing this belief mechanism and applying it to the group instead of themselves. And that scares me, because the root of the problem might not necessarily be religion. The root of the problem might be human nature, lack of free will, and how to navigate a world with these emotions and feelings properly. So I try to approach everything as objective and human nature, and this is why I do things, and this is why I'm trying not to do these things. But it's frustrating, and I'm asking, does anything I've said, like, I'm asking for critique on what I'm doing. I know I haven't been precise about going about it, but like, does it seem like I'm being respectful to the conversation, or am I just wasting energy?
I have no idea. Like, that barely made sense to me. I don't know how to evaluate what you're doing without watching what you're doing.
Yeah, we're not there. Matt said earlier, like, we need more specific examples, and it's like we can't tell you if you're approaching it respectfully or not. Sometimes yeah, okay.
They'll say there's the experience. They love this one. This is a philosophy one. Experience can mean more than just being taught it, and they always refer to, like, the woman locked into a castle has never seen the sky. Could you tell her what the sky is? Could you read it to her, and would she be able to know exactly what the sky felt like without seeing it? And if she went outside and saw the sky, would she understand all of it? And for me, it's a fallacy from the beginning, because you're using technology to express something, a feeling or an objective thing, and the technology is limited. Give me a couple thousand years, and maybe we can download the exact feelings and everything, so you could do that. And they're trying to use that as factual argument when it's not. And you said past house waster. That's a common one. And it's like, well, how do you know which one to choose then? So, like, if you go to, like, I just found out I chose Christianity, and actually it's Muslim. I mean, like, so it's not good faith discussion, but they're going about it. It seems like they're going about it because it's tied to their human nature and not an objective thing.
Okay. Here's my best possible advice, Eugene. Go back to this point in the conversation and rewind to when you started that, and type in everything you said word for word and read it and analyze it, because it sounded like you were starting to talk about, Mary, the color theorist thing about qualia, but you were all over the place with a whole bunch of concepts that did not mesh well together, didn't make sense, and then you bounced to Pascal's wager. If that's what you're doing, I don't give a shit about the respect part. But if that's what you're doing in conversations with them, it's not surprising that they're leaving confused, because I'm confused.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And I think if you do that, you can be like, oh, this is what I'm thinking, and this is what I'm saying, and the two aren't lining up. I'm just a little disjointed. And then you can work to say, let me
I'm very
take
disjointed.
notes so that I can better express what I'm actually saying, because it's not coming out the way I think you intend it.
It isn't. I am super nervous. I mean,
That's all
you
right.
know,
It's a live show. Just, you might be one of those people that needs to spend more time on something beforehand, front loading, and then, put notes together.
I
But
appreciate
if this
time. I'm
if
sorry.
this happens
Thank
to you in conversation with theists, it's not surprising that people might be confused, or you're not getting the results you're expecting. So give that a shot.
And you don't need to apologize for being nervous. I get nervous doing this show. I get nervous performing. It's okay, but it just, it is. Yeah, it's like
No, it's not. It's more-
well,
you
I've
guys
got
are
a
like
neck.
idol. It's hard.
I get it. Yeah, I was just gonna
It's like
say
you've helped me grow. So it's very there's a lot of emotions tied to a conversation with you guys, and yeah, I definitely will do what you said, Matt. And I'm sorry, just let me go. I'm sorry, guys. Bye.
okay. All right,
Hey.
Eugene.
Have a good Sunday.
Yeah. Go
That's
easy
Wednesday.
on yourself, Eugene. Don't, it's all right. And you don't need to be, but I think what Matt's saying there is that if you want to get better at having these conversations in a way that potentially could be more productive, or where you're saying what you want to say, it's a good thing to go back and listen to yourself and be like, does that track? I have a nephew right now who's getting into acting, and his mom keeps calling me and being like, how do I get him to be more in his body? He's a teenager. And she's like, his body's not doing the things that he thinks it's doing. He's getting notes from his director to be more intentional with his movements. And I just told her, I said, first of all, most teenagers are not really in their bodies because it's new. Their body just stretched out like 1.5 feet in the last couple of years, and they're figuring out how to walk around in the new frame that they're in. And second of all, like as an actor myself, I had to start filming myself in college dancing and doing rehearsals, because I had the same problem where someone would give me a note and I'd be like, I swear that's what I'm doing. I swear that, and I had to film it and watch it and go, oh, I see what they're saying. I see what I'm missing. And I just had to work on molding what my, kind of getting my body to do what my brain was asking it to do. And it's the same thing with talking. Matt and I have a lot of experience yapping and talking. And sometimes it takes practice to just hone in the skill of like getting it to go from here to here quickly and sound something like what you're hoping it sounds like as it's formulating up here. And yeah, so just practice,
Take notes, analyze it, practice. Not everybody can be perfect like me on day one. All right. A couple other calls. Let's see. I want to make sure especially the people who've been waiting for a long time. Elijah's calling from, wait, that's Alaska. Wow. Phones are him, going through the process of deconstruction. Welcome, Elijah. How can we help?
How are you guys doing today?
Doing all right.
I'm tired, but good.
Yeah.
Just woke up a little bit ago, so things are going well here. I was calling today to talk about deconstruction, and I understand at least one of you is a former believer as well. How did you guys handle working? Because wow, I'm sorry, I'm mincing my words quite badly.
It's all right.
How did you handle dealing with your former church family?
Yeah. It's hard. It's not easy. I'll tell you that much, especially early on. And sometimes, in some cases, it stays hard. But that's that thing that I was talking about earlier, of that differential where you understand them fundamentally better than they understand you because you have occupied their perspective. You've seen through that perspective. You've lived in that perspective, and they are, in most cases, utterly terrified to step into your perspective and to try to understand and empathize with your perspective because they know how fragile their faith structure is. And so unfortunately what happens is it becomes incumbent on us to be the more patient and understanding party, and that can be really frustrating, and it can get really old really quick. But Matt, you were about to say something.
My thing is, so I went, my brain went immediately to family because that's a story, but church family. I left
my family too, but not just church family. My immediate related blood family.
Yeah. So I left my after high school and joined the Navy. I spent 8.5 years in the Navy, and then I moved to a completely different town. So by the time I was an atheist, I had virtually no contact with any of my former church family, certainly not the ones that I grew up with, until Facebook. And then there was actually a Facebook group that somebody created for our former youth group to kind of reminisce from our church. And I joined it. I think my brother actually set it up, but I joined the group, and the group died because I was in it. There were quite a few of them that, as soon as they found out I was an atheist, they wanted nothing more to do with me. So the group kind of died because people didn't want to interact. To their credit, a few people hung around. When it comes to my actual family, we had a number of arguments and everything else until we just got to a point where they admitted they're closed-minded. They're not equipped to have these discussions. They know God's real, and I'm working for Satan, and there's no point in having a discussion. Nothing they say is going to change my mind because they haven't come up with any new evidence-based arguments, and nothing I say is going to change their mind because they don't give a shit about reality and fallacies. So we talk about fun stuff.
So I was raised a young earth creationist, very fundamentalist conservative church. My wife actually is the one that said, nope, you're going to read some scientific articles, and I'm going to explain them to you if you need me to. And she's the one that got me on the path I'm on today with actually understanding how the world works. But I feel like I can't talk to my family at all because it's like walking through a minefield. My father started just texting scripture at me with no other context. And unfortunately, I own a house in the same town that they're in, so I can't just up and leave, unfortunately. I'm pretty well invested in this house.
You shouldn't have to leave.
Because it is such a small community, I see people from church everywhere and just constantly run into them. Heck, I was at a friend's shop fixing a truck, and one of the church members, turns out he works there. So,
yeah. And so, first of all, I got a birthday card that said, we're praying for God to stop you no matter what the cost. That was a birthday card.
Well, that's not ominous at all.
So they're not allowed to send me mail anymore. I told them, if you have anything important to get me that must be sent by mail, you need to contact me in advance, because every single piece of mail that arrives in my mailbox from you guys will go in the trash unread, because I'm not interested in one-way communication. I'm not interested in being preached at. I'm not interested in you guys cowardly getting to send me hate mail that you think are messages of love that I'm not allowed to respond to. So all of it goes in the trash. My mom and I had arguments about religion until my dad put his foot down and said he forbid her to ever speak to me about it again. And I let them know that the fact that their religion permits my dad to forbid my mom from doing anything at all, let alone speaking to her oldest son about religion, would make me despise that religion and consider it one of the most evil things I've ever heard of, even if I didn't already despise it and find it to be one of the most evil things I've ever heard of. And so now nothing will ever go back to normal. there's a new normal. I went and visited them for their 60th wedding anniversary, and we hung out with the family. We played games. We laughed our asses off. We had a good time, and then we left, because that's all we will ever have are let's reminisce about the good old days, scrubbing it and sanitizing it so that we don't talk about the things that we disagree about. Let's never talk about religion or politics. Let's play games and talk about the weather or what work we're doing on the house, keep it brief, and then go back home, because we're related and we love each other in that regard, but we definitely don't approve of each other's lives. And whether or not we like each other is kind of dependent on what we're doing. And I am fortunate in that I know people for whom that situation would be so traumatic that they would rather hide who they are so that they don't have to deal with that, because they're terrified of the prospect of losing that relationship with close kin. I'm not.
And that's where I am right now. I show up just as an act of, yeah, I'm here, I'm at church, I'm still definitely a Christian. They have no idea.
Yeah. I am not. I don't care if someone is blood related to me or not. You're either going to treat me, my partner, with respect and dignity. You're either going to provide positive value to my life, or I want nothing to do with you. I have no tie to the great, or no longing for the great cosmic connection to parents. It doesn't. I don't know. I may be weird. I am weird, and I get that that's not typical. So the one thing I will recommend, I would recommend reaching out to recoveringfromreligion.org. Not only do they have online people that you can reach out to and talk to, but they have a hotline that you can call and speak to them on the phone. And they are also tied to the Secular Therapy Project, seculartherapy.org, where you can find counselors who are only going to use scientifically reliable counseling methods. They're not going to tell you you need to get right with Jesus or you need to go to this church or anything like that. And those are the two resources that I recommend constantly. I don't ever recommend me as a resource, because I long ago decided I don't give a fuck if we're blood related, if we grew up together, if we've known each other for 57 years or not. I want my life to be good. And if you're not contributing to that good, if you're making it more difficult, fuck you. See you later. And I know that that's unusual, because a lot of people, and believe me, I understand how unusual it is. I'm really close to people who can't do that. And I'm not even saying that's the right thing to do or the best thing to do. That's just me.
But I do think, though,
I can't read it.
I think getting comfortable with that, though, like there's a lot of healing in that, because what is almost always going to happen when you try to set boundaries, like Matt is talking about, is Darvo. Like almost always what's going to happen is your family members, the people in that community are going to say, well, you are so intolerant of other beliefs, of other opinions. We just have this disagreement, and all of a sudden you go no contact with me. I'm not allowed over for dinner. Oh, I can't see my grandkids anymore. I can't, it is. And the way that they will flip it and twist it to, you are the intolerant one. You are the one who has an issue with the fact that we have a disagreement here, that we're at an ideological impasse. How come? And it's bullshit, right? Because exactly what, like that birthday card is horrific, and it's a great example, though, of the way that the cowards in these fragile faith structures, who are terrified to expose their faith structure to honest scrutiny, they feel so empowered and liberated to share their beliefs with you anytime they want, no matter how offensive those beliefs are, no matter how abhorrent those beliefs are. They feel completely liberated that, like, what I'm doing is a good thing. I'm letting you know the good news of the gospel means good news. I'm letting you know the good news so I can save your immortal soul. And that's always a good thing, no matter how harmful or rude or hateful the thing that I'm telling you is. And I get to say that. But the moment you push back and say, what you just said to me is disgusting, I don't want a relationship with you anymore, you're the intolerant bigot. You're the one who has no tolerance for just people with differing beliefs from you. And there's no room for a discussion about how what they just said, what they just did is so gross, is so rude, is so incredibly inhumane. And it takes a lot of self-love and self-respect and self-trust and self-confidence to set a boundary like that and know that the Darvo is going to come, and let it be about them, and let them be the ones who are the ones who because, like, you know, like this whole last year, 2025, I'm a very politically active person online, and this whole last year, my family, who largely agrees with me on politics, started getting into this thing of being like, we think you're pushing it too far. I was angrier. It's a bad time to be in the business of being a political commentator, and there's always some new horror around every new corner every day. And you know, we're all getting a little worn down in our 10th plus year of the Trump political era. And I'm very angry a lot of times in my content and unapologetically rude to people who support this regime. And my family, the line kept coming up. You've got to just be okay with the fact that there are people who disagree with you, that there are people who have different opinions. And the truth is, like, I'm a naturally self-critical person. I have a really, really strong, loud inner critic that lives in my head that I work really hard in therapy to live with and to, try to not take so seriously. But anytime someone tells me you've got a problem with being tolerant of other people's beliefs, that critic jumps in and goes, They're right. You're a little self-righteous. You're too confident in your own beliefs. But what I've had to get more comfortable in is the fact that, like, the positions that I'm hardline on, the positions that I'm setting boundaries on, are like non-negotiable positions about basic human rights and just respecting people's fundamental humanity. And if we can't agree on that, if we can't agree that it's bad that masked agents of the state are kidnapping children and putting them in concentration camps and shooting people in the face in broad daylight and lying to us about it, if we can't agree on that, then we can't have a productive, healthy relationship.
That's a human rights issue, and human rights shouldn't be politics.
Right.
Oh, no,
exactly.
No. Human rights is politics. Everything is politics. How do you have human rights without a political system to protect them? But
Correct.
I get your point.
Yeah, but these people will pull out the Darvo on you, and they'll go like, "Hey, I'm still willing to go to lunch with you. I'm still willing to go to the Christmas party with you. How come you?" And it's like, and they'll try to make you the problem, and that can be really, really hard. And it takes a lot of, like, a big part of the work is like trusting that you know your heart, and that you know that your values do withstand scrutiny, and that you regularly expose your values and your beliefs to rigorous examination and questioning. And that's the fundamental difference between you and the people who are accusing you of being intolerant because you're setting boundaries.
Got it. Yeah. Been dealing even more lately, because I do still show up to just make an appearance and say, yeah, I'm still here. It's just been horrifying to see there's no hate like Christian love.
Mm-hmm.
And talking just about how evil atheists are, and agnostics, and the LGBTQ group, how they're all sinners and how they are out to get Christians. And it's just insane.
They actually should be out to get Christians. They're not. They should be out to get Christians to stop marginalizing people and stop violating their rights and stop lying about them. But all those Christians and others, not just Christians, they all have like trans derangement syndrome at an epic level, because like trans folks represent less than 1% of the population, and yet the part of the conversation that they occupy,
like 20 or 30% of the population.
Yeah, it's really weird. They're The president of the United States has more felony convictions by two times and then some than there were trans athletes in the NCAA.
Which is,
Yeah.
I released this song recently where the end is just a montage of me just screaming every accusation is a confession, and every time I say it, there's an article on the screen of some MAGA person who used to work on a campaign or who used to be a, President Trump's personal religious advisor, whoever, all these different people over the years who have been outed as child sex predators because they all eventually are, and it's always in their camp too. And a lot of people in my comments kept going, well, if every accusation is a confession, aren't you just saying the same thing about yourself because you're accusing all of them of all these things? And I said, no, you misunderstand. I'm not making baseless accusations. I'm talking about things that have been proven in court. I'm talking about things that these people have admitted to. These are not accusations. I'm stating objective facts that these people went around making baseless accusations about the trans community and about drag queens and about queer people where we have no substantive evidence to back this up on a widespread analytical basis, that there is no data that shows that there is a problem widespread in these communities with, with child predation. But we have so much evidence, thousands and thousands and thousands of cases of pastors and priests and the youth pastor at this church and Republican legislators and officials being the people who are actually the perpetrators of these crimes. And this is not me just making baseless accusations based on ideology so I can score points in a culture war. This is stuff that is settled. This is settled fact, And so they'll always try to flip it on you. They'll always try to flip it back. But yeah.
Elijah, I appreciate the call, and I know you're going through some difficult stuff. I still recommend the best thing you can do, especially if you're still showing up at church services and kind of playing the role and everything else, to keep the peace, is to find yourself some friends and or the Psychotherapy Project or Recovering from Religion, where you can have conversations with other people who've been through similar things, because you're not alone. You're not even alone in your town, and probably not even in your family, and yet it can definitely feel like that. And this is part of the oppression that religions engage in, making the consequences to speaking out in opposition so high that some people are unwilling to do it, even if it means denying the basic freedom to live the life the way they want.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk to me.
You bet. Give us a call back sometime, Elijah. Let us know if things improve.
Will do. I like watching Forrest and Gutsy Gibbon, but you guys are enjoyable to watch as well. You have a good day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Elijah.
We're a good second tier. They'll be on like tomorrow, so that's good.
Yeah.
You get a lot more science stuff. Hey, we got a theist, and the theists always get priority on this show. So James is calling from Canada. James, the theist, pronouns are he, him, wants to debate the difference between micro and macro evolution. Hey, James, welcome to the show.
Speaking of calls that we need Forrest for.
Yes, we hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. People don't
I
ever
guess
need
the
to
first
say
point
that.
is for Matt.
Okay.
Arden's a fact.
I knew it.
See, you stupid person. I muted you. They can't hear you, you dumb fucker.
I got your.
And I am a faggot. Proudly.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I was wrong, by the way. I made a prediction. I recorded this on my phone. Some of you guys probably saw me doing it just a minute ago. I was wrong. I was right in that I knew he was not sincere, but here we go. Let me play this. Not taking the call, but we're going to take a call from James in Canada who wants to know the difference between micro and macro evolution. And I'm going to give an explanation, and I'm going to bet that he ignores that explanation because he's actually a troll engaged in a dishonest line of conversation and isn't actually confused about this. Damn. The only thing I was wrong about was whether or not you were going to hang on the phone long enough for me to actually explain the difference between macro and evolution. You guys are so ridiculously predictable, and your trans derangement syndrome is so epic. I mean, like, I can smell you. I have a sick psychic sense. I can predict and record. I just gave you slightly more credit that you would take more than 5 or 6 seconds to get to your Baba Booey. So
it's so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing to dedicate your life to like, and there's just no evidence that agrees with you. I watched this clip of Emily, I think her name's Emily Wilson. She's this conservative. She has a podcast called Emily Saves America. I watched this clip of her recently where she's like, there's all these like liberals and leftists that think they're so smart and they sound smart because they do all this research and stuff. She goes, I don't do any research whatsoever, and I can talk about all these topics, and I don't even do any research. And she's like, and I know that she's like, she goes, and if I try to do research, it's really hard to find research that backs me up because all the research out there is biased. It's so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing that like your entire life is about figuring out how to villainize trans people, and you can't bring receipts, like you can't find them, and anything that you think is like the potential problem, you're literally sitting in the den of the people who are the problem. Like you are in a cult of Nazi pedophiles, and how embarrassing. What an embarrassing way to live your life.
By the way, if you ever do end up in a conversation about the difference between micro and macro evolution, once upon a time it was enough to just say there is no such thing, there is no difference, it's not part of science. That's not entirely true, and that the labels, because they were used, became slightly useful in describing smaller localized changes compared to broader changes. However, when it comes to the mechanism of evolution by means of natural selection, evolution is the change in allele frequencies over time, and there is no macro-micro distinction there that is of any significant use. And a good analogy that I've talked about is Spanish, French, and Italian are all Latin languages. These are all languages that are derived originally from Latin. And within Spanish, you have like Spain Spanish and Mexico Spanish. And within any language, you have regional dialects and idioms and jargon that gradually change the language over time. It's directly analogous to things like bird beaks and other smaller changes that you can perceive in the time scale that we're able to view things, and the inevitable large changes that result in vast populations over vast spans of time. At no point in history did a Latin-speaking mother give birth to a Spanish-speaking child. That's not how Latin became Spanish. Every child always spoke the language that it was taught by its parents, including all those little subtleties, because you cannot evolve out of a clade. And so micro and macro evolution are just the labels for the scope or resolution at which you are assessing the issue. Things look different at 35,000 feet than they do at 35 millimeters. And you can see this in all kinds of things, optical illusions, everything else. But at the end of the day, a friend of mine once did a Latin Spaniduck based on that description of languages, because languages aren't biologically evolving, but it's an analogy. And at some point, somebody no longer spoke the same language in the same way that their ancestors did, to the point where they would no longer be able to communicate, and they would no longer be able to communicate with the lineage that slipped off to the side here. So that Spanish speakers couldn't communicate with a French speaker or an Italian speaker, or at least not very well. this is the same thing with biological evolution, where eventually you get the sort of speciation, which is difficult to define. And it used to be we'd use the simple definition of if they can no longer produce offspring, but that's incomplete. So call in and talk to Forrest, and Guts at Gibbon when they're doing the show. Sorry. And get a better description of macro and micro evolution, where those labels are useful and where they're not useful. But they're never going to be useful. They're always going to be useful labels to somebody somewhere if they're trying to misrepresent stuff. And they were completely useless for that conversation. The only label that mattered, that got him through, was the theist label. So if he is a theist, he got to go to the front of the queue in order to be a name-calling dipshit. And if he's not a theist, then he lied to be a name-calling dipshit. Which is worse? Lying to be hateful or just being hateful? And does it matter? I don't know that it matters, because if you're just a hateful transphobe, I really don't care if you lied to tell me. You were already bad enough. Oh, well.
Just how embarrassing to spend consciousness being a bigot. It's just like, bigots have never been remembered well in the history of the world. Nobody's like reading speeches of like famous bigots and being like, see, no, this person really spoke eloquently on why you should subjugate this particular classification of person. And this is like, even other bigots like won't proudly read those things publicly. They'll read it at like little private bigot meetings, but like the fact that you have to be fundamentally ashamed of your ideology and know that history will remember you as a fuck-ass loser, and like, why? What a stupid way to choose to spend your existence.
We got a couple more callers here. We got about 20 minutes left. We talked to Ben in New York. Pronouns are he, him. Ben's an atheist who says most people don't believe in a God. How do you know that, Ben?
Well, I don't know it. Well, I'm going to say, can you hear me? Am I on? Like, is this working?
Yeah, literally nobody has to answer that question, because if we can't hear you, you'll figure it out pretty quickly. But yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. So I don't know it. I'm intuiting it, because you can't really make a good logical argument for magic. And I think everyone knows that if they're applying it toward anything other than their own religion, right? So if you ask a Christian, about Hinduism, they're not going to take that seriously. Like the whole thing where any given atheist only doesn't believe in one less religion than any Christian, right? It's like thousands of religions. No Christians believe in all the other religions, but they believe in their religion because they grew up in that religion and they were indoctrinated in it. And
what about the people who are not? What about the people who are part of a religion who think the other people are worshiping demons?
That is also indoctrination, I think. How many of them really believe in demons?
So Ben, first of all, Ben, there's an audio issue with your phone. It's like crackling, but I didn't ask where it came from. I don't know how you can demonstrate that that's that you can just dismiss it with indoctrination, but whether you're indoctrinated or not, you can still honestly believe something. I used to believe in God. I believe people in other religions worship demons. It doesn't matter whether that was the result of indoctrination or not. I believed it.
Well, if your family believed it, maybe you felt like you didn't have a choice.
Okay, so now you're going to speculate about whether or not I felt like I had a choice. How is that relevant to whether or not I honestly believed that?
Well, I think some people do honestly believe it, but I'm speculating. And
okay,
what
use is it? What use is it for us to have a discussion about some people might believe stuff and some people might not?
Well, I'm saying why they would believe in it. So they would believe in it.
Isn't that
because
also
they were
speculation?
indoctrinated.
Why did I believe in God?
Why did you believe in? Did you say guns or God?
Are you fucking kidding me? Why on earth do you think that I would say, why did I believe in guns? Why did I believe in
I
God?
don't know, man. I misheard. Well, if you grew up in a community and everyone in your community believed in that God, and it was a pro-social community, because as much as there is bad with religion, there, a lot of good comes out of it too. There's a lot of pro-social behaviors that go with religion. Even though a lot of religions do heinous shit and believe in heinous shit, that it does spawn a lot of pro-social behavior.
I asked you why I believed.
Why you believed?
That's correct. That's what my question was.
Well, that's a question at the heart of every person, right?
The question I asked was, what good is us for us to have a conversation with you speculating about what some people believe and what some people don't believe, or why some people believe and why some people don't believe? And you were making bold assertions about most people don't believe in God, or they believe for this reason, or they don't believe that. And so I told you what I believed and asked why, and you haven't given me an answer.
You're asking me to tell you why you believe in something?
Don't you know?
How can I possibly know why you believe in something?
Then why are you fucking pretending to know why other people believe?
I don't.
You literally are. That's been the entirety of this call, is you speculating about what people do really believe and why they really believe it. And my point is, why should Ben's speculations be of any interest to anybody? Do you have some data? Do you have something to build off of?
No.
Then when you run around pretending that you've reached some brilliant conclusion that most people don't actually believe in God, I'm still talking. That most people don't actually believe in God, the people who actually believe in God get to dismiss you as an arrogant know-nothing. Why would you do that?
I guess I intuit the fact that it sounds so crazy that most people that are indoctrinated or born into it as their children, growing up, Hey, everybody,
Ben has incredible intuition and is very proud of his own thoughts and doesn't care whether or not they're true, doesn't care about the impact that it has on these sorts of discussions, doesn't care about how it reflects on the rest of the community, because Ben's an intuitive. Good job, Ben.
All right, sorry.
Sweet.
All right, Ben. I don't have anything to add.
It's one thing to say, let's try to get to the heart of why people believe. But when you come in right off the bat and you're like, most people don't believe in God and most people are indoctrinated. Maybe they are. How is that relevant? And how does that impact the people who genuinely do believe in God? And what about the people who don't think that they were indoctrinated? Or, by the way, who didn't have a particularly good community? There are people who are raised in religious communities where the key aspect of what they're told and what they're brought up believing is not that they are in a good community. They are in a special community that is separate from the rest of the world, and they are under attack by demonic forces all the time, and that includes all these other churches. I was a Southern Baptist evangelical Protestant who was taught that Catholics were in a Mary worshiping, saint worshiping cult. Why did I believe that? Well, you can call it indoctrination, but I believed that I experienced the presence of the Holy Spirit in church. It was for bad reasons, but I also believed the interpretation and understanding of the Bible that was presented to me, which isn't merely indoctrination. There are cases made for this. If we go back to the beginning of the show, the very first call, I think it was the first call, was about, is there some contradiction between Hebrews 11 and the Genesis story of Abraham? And the problem is that it's not just indoctrination to say, or indoctrination doesn't tell you anything. If someone makes an internally consistent, compelling case for X within religion, and the people around you are also believing, and you actually experience something, you're standing in church and you get goosebumps and your hair stands up and you feel elated and you feel joyful in a way that is fundamentally different to what you've experienced before that, and the people who you are biologically, evolutionarily trained to trust as your guides for this world are standing around telling you, that's the Holy Spirit, we feel it too, this is how you know you're right with God. You are not just indoctrinated. It does nothing to say, oh, you don't actually believe in God. The fuck I didn't. It is ridiculous and insulting to run around saying, oh, you don't actually believe in God. Stop pretending you can read minds because you're shitty at it, Ben. I do it on stage for a living. I did it at a 50% rate in one video for this caller. Doesn't mean I'm actually psychic, and I could have been wrong. Stop being so enamored of your own conclusions, because that is how religions are formed in many ways. Somebody takes some other religion or and they either despise it so much that they invent a new one because they think they're doing something good and they think they've tapped into something real. Not every psychic reader out there is a knowing fraud. Some of them deceive themselves into thinking that what they do is real. Actually, some skeptics have done this as well. The second you think you've cornered the market on I can't be fooled, it's too late. All right. Possibly, probably, likely the last call for today. Zach has been on hold for over an hour. Pronouns are he, him. He's from Texas. He's looking for strategies on dealing with aggressive, bigoted family. Well, we were just talking about that a couple minutes ago, Zach. So welcome to the show. You're on with Austin and moi.
Yeah, you guys were pretty comprehensive on the last one. I feel like I may not have a ton to add to that conversation. My situation is a little bit different. I guess I'm more looking for, because I know, Matt, you've talked about how you still have contact with your family. Austin, do you still regularly contact yours?
Yeah, we're mostly on good terms. Yeah.
What? You also mentioned they kind of have a little bit more progressive views. So I guess what
it
makes
took a long time.
Worth it?
What makes it worth it? Oh, geez, I don't know. I guess it took a while to get there. I'll tell you. There were about 5 or 6 years where nobody was on my team, and I was just, it was none of my friends that I went to high school with, none of my cousins. I was just, the way that they describe you when you leave a community like that is like you're lost, you're fallen, and everyone, and people talk about it like it's just really sad. Like, oh geez, have you heard about Austin? And so there's this, it's a very kind of lonely, but it's a very lonely thing. But I also found I was lucky enough to be able to replace the community with new friends really quickly. And I had a really strong group of friends that really inspired me and helped me find confidence in the new path I was on. But I think what makes it worth it is I do like a lot of the people in my family, and that helps. And not everyone is lucky enough to have that, where I actually enjoy being around them, and we enjoy each other's company. But I think early on I had something to prove to them. I had this whole, I wanted to show them that I was still me, because one of the things that we were taught in the community I was raised in is that, like, real true happiness is only possible in that organization. That's the only, and everyone outside of it is sort of lost and wandering in darkness and confusion. And so the way that it's sort of talked about is like, once a person leaves, once a person falls, once a person loses their path, you're going to notice the countenance of that person change. That person is going to be a different person who you remember. And it was really important to me to show them that fundamentally I was still here, that it was still me.
Yeah.
And even though that was really hard sometimes because they were not very interested in trying to understand me, it was important for me to just be there to show, look, it's still me. I'm still here. And I'll tell you, it's still not, I mean, like, it's still hard. I still, last year was a really difficult year. I've had a really rough ride with one of my brothers who voted for Donald Trump, and we have had a really rough ride for the last 15 months or so. And it's been really tough. And what's helped that is that he has told me that he's acknowledged that he thinks he made a mistake and that he feels bad about making the mistake that he made. And I'm like, okay, that helps. That helps a little bit. A little bit of accountability helps, but it's hard. Not gonna say it's not,
So like the family I'm having trouble with are my parents specifically, both deep in MAGA, both deeply unrepentant Trump voters. And I'm fine to just like cut them off and leave them entirely. They, however, keep pursuing me, primarily because I have their only grandchildren, right?
You have all the power.
They deeply want access to my kids. And I, number one, I don't feel inclined to grant that. And number two, I just don't like them as individuals. The rub kind of comes from my other family, who I do like. So I've got two younger brothers who I enjoy interacting with, but they're on me to, fix things with my parents. And like you were talking about earlier, they frame it in terms of like, it's just politics. Why are you so upset? It's just politics. But it's not just politics. It's people's lives. It's people's freedom. It's people's ability to live in society without being attacked physically or emotionally. And I just can't bring myself to turn the other cheek, look the other way.
It's a genuine physical and it's a genuine matter of physical and psychological safety. Like, it is an absolute safety matter. But like I said, I am incredibly fortunate that my family is primarily made up of really good people who are interested and desirous to do the right things and do good things. And I know that that's just not the case. I mean, my entire life, we've been adopting strays. We've been taking in people who have been kicked out of their own families. And it continues to this day. Right. There's a guy that grew up down the street from me that we were kids together. And he reached out a few years ago to tell me about what's going on in his life. And he just said, my family has, basically cut ties with me because my whole family is deep in the MAGA cult and I could not follow them down that path. And he has kids who his parents have never met, and he has no relationship with his parents and with his siblings. And so I just told him, I said, I bet my family would be happy to have you over for Thanksgiving if you want to come over to our house. And they were. And now, like, his kids are now calling my parents grandma and grandpa. And so I am very fortunate to have really, really great parents and a really great foundation of strong morals and ethics in my family. But I'm very aware not everybody gets that. And it is crazy. It's like, this guy told me one time the last conversation that he had with his dad was his dad came to him because his dad's a little bit more reasonable. And he said, please don't do this. I really want to have a relationship with you. And he looked at him and said, Dad, I'm not doing anything. Because apparently his mom told his dad, it's him or me. You either pick a relationship with him, our son, or me. And he was like, listen to what's going on. You are married to a woman who is telling you that you have to choose between a relationship with your son or her. I'm not doing that. I'm not giving you the ultimatum. Yeah. Your wife is. and just take that for what it's worth. Figure it out. Put the pieces together or don't. And as Matt said, you actually have all the power in this situation, even though they're gonna try to Darvo it, and they're gonna try to make you the mean one for depriving them access to their grandkids. But they know what needs to be done if they want to be a safe fixture in the lives of their grandkids, and they're refusing to do it. So,
I got to interrupt because we are completely out of time, but I agree with what Austin was saying. You need to be around to force them to face the consequences, because some people aren't going to change their views. And how do they know their kids aren't gay or trans or in love with somebody who is, or anything like that? But in the end of the day, I don't want my kids to grow up to be bigots, and I'd rather not expose them to bigots. And I don't know why you don't care, but I'm not the one ending this relationship. You are holding views and trying to spread those views that impact the people that I love, and that's not love. You put your foot down when you can, but we have to go. I appreciate the call, Zach. We have completely run out of time for this episode of the Sunday Show. Take care. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Good to hang out with you, Austin. Arden's going to run the credits now as we turn things over to the Cus I Wanna that's getting ready to start, or already started, or whatever it is. Be sure to like and subscribe and tell people about the show. We finally got some people calling in to defend some views, and then we had the regular bigots calling in as well. And they get less and less time. And the more good callers we have, the less inclined we are to even give them a shot when I can predict who they are long beforehand. Patreon.com/calltheline to support, and alignmerch.com if you want to support in a different way.